This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Join you with the Cinephile, unseen, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on another milestone episode here of 350. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this one here, of course, my Voyage to the Fives. So I've actually ran through what I've done for my... Let me go ahead and actually break down this main event here. So I'm going to go ahead and do, this is going to be films that all end in years of 5, so that's why it's a Voyage to the Fives. And then I'll have like honorable mentions, I'll do my bottom 10 as well as stats, and then I'm going to break this down into little categories like I usually do here. It'll be like 100 to 76, 75 to 51, 50 to 26, and then 25 to, number 1. So these all have to, like I said, end in year that of 5. There's going to be some of them here that might actually be 2026 wide releases, but I'm going by IMDb with the festival and everything like that. So if they did do something and they end in year 5, that's why it'll end up being on this list. So then for mini reviews, I have a screener of the Rebrand, and then I have my 1996 Scouring to the Six rewatch is going to be Tremors 2 Aftershocks. I gave a rewatch to the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010. I also checked out We Go On, and then a rewatch for a 2026 wide release of Undertone. And then looking through here and everything like that is, I also have 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror. It looks like all I have here then for this intro. Let me go ahead, rest my voice, and then get you over to those mini reviews, but I hope you enjoy coming this journey with me.
Are you looking for a movie podcast with deep dives, interviews, and thoughtful film analysis?
We ain't got none of that. What do we got?
You want to hold the bucket?
Right, I'll hold the bucket, sit in the
I'll
cuff
just stand
chair.
there with my. I will never blink. I'll just be there holding the bucket.
I will
like,
never blink on her drapes, most likely. You look like a drape jizzer.
R.I.P. that sweet, sweet pussy.
It is known that Jessica Tandy had the sweetest pussy in Hollywood.
If you don't know, Google it. Don't Google Jessica Tandy's pussy, you guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. Doom Generation.
Available anywhere you find podcasts.
And for my first mini review here is going to be a screener I got to check out of the Rebrand. This is technically from 2025, getting its wide release here in 2026. Now, it was directed by Kay Adelaide, and then she also co-wrote this with Nancy Webb. So this stars Andy E. McQueen, Naomi Silver-Venzia, and Webb also stars in this. So it's a horror film from Canada, and the ratings here, IMDb is a 6.4, Letterboxd a 3.5, and our synopsis is, Nicole, an 8 months pregnant videographer, is hired by a lesbian influencer couple to film a redemption documentary after they've been publicly canceled, but Nicole quickly discovers that the couple have nefarious ulterior motives. This was a film I got the chance to see thanks to Kim from Dominion 3 PR. This is a film that was doing its festival circuit, and she sent over the press release for me to get a chance to see with a screener in it, or that I could request a screener. Since this is making its wide release for 2026, I agreed to check it out. I will warn you that this is going to be a divisive film for some of the subject matter, I'm sure, but I was intrigued to check it out from everything that I had read. So then for this one here is, since it's found footage, a major element of this is realism. I don't recognize the actresses, so that helps. I was questioning if the person filming was going to keep doing so when things started to get a little bit hectic here. So Nicole is that cinematographer. She's portrayed by Silver Venzia. So she's hired for this documentary about this couple who are Thistle, portrayed by Webb, and Blair, portrayed by McQueen. They got canceled over something that Blair accidentally said on a live stream. So it makes sense that Nicole would be filming as much as she does. This gives me heavy vibes of Creep, but instead of just one guy and a camera person, we have this couple and then a camera person. Now that it's set up, I want to focus on the documentary central couple. Blair said something sensitive on live stream and it was canceled. I didn't catch to judge how badly it was, but honestly, Blair seemed simple enough that she either didn't realize it was offensive or was just taken out of context. I like the pressure on Thistle to repair their image, even if it means faking their marriage, which they've already been married for years from what she actually relays later, or pregnancy to regain support. Her influencer obsession makes her increasingly terrifying. Then there's Nicole. Something that makes found footage effective is that it stands in as a surrogate for the viewer. The setting adds tension since we know how far she came to do this job. Her plan isn't to stay with them. She originally just kind of wants to film, head home, and then come back, especially because of how pregnant she is. There's an uncomfortable feeling as they continue to push her to stay. More money helps at one point, and then there's like a washout on the road, force another. Her car is in sabotage, and they blame the homophobic neighbors that were referenced earlier. So there's a creepy angle here as well. I'll tread lightly as to not spoil things, but Thistle states at one point that she's also pregnant. I was suspicious of this early on as we see different things that she does that would indicate that isn't truly the case. We have a reveal later. Something of note is that Thistle acknowledges how easy it is to gain supporters as a family influencer. Thistle makes an offer to Nicole about her baby. She immediately refuses, and Thistle doesn't handle being told no very well. Other themes to include here would be like authenticity versus narcissism. Any channel is a performance, but we see the behind the curtain that Thistle is driven by narcissism rather than authenticity, while Blair is more likable and pushed into Thistle's agenda. The couple's calculated rebrand offers a cynical look at the exploitation for financial gain, surveillance, and constant streaming. The cameras around the house also fall into surveillance. I also like how it explores marginalized identities, especially in question how much of Thistle is shaped by ambition. Let's then shift over to what carries this, which would be the acting performances. Silver Venzia is great as our lead, and she's also kind of an audience stand-in, especially since she isn't a pushover. Her reasons for saying more money, a blocked road, and later her sabotaged car all make sense. McQueen is strong as the likable yet simple Blair, whose misunderstandings give her an innocence. Webb, who co-wrote this, works well as the villainous Thistle. I also like the Crime Queen's host, who helps set the stage, because it's a YouTube show similar to like any of those crime things where they're introducing what happened and then all that stuff then to be the filmmaking aspects. I do think the cinematography and framing are good. The found footage style works well. It's a low budget documentary, so that makes sense. We are limited on the effects here, but we don't need too much there. What they did was good. It does look practically done, so that definitely helps. I do like the framing of this being an episode about the ordeal with seeing the outcome. Other than that, the diegetic sound adds design, another layer of realism. In conclusion, this is a timely and uncomfortable found footage horror film that succeeds by grounding its escalating tension in influencer culture, performative authenticity, and the dangerous need to control a public image. The setup gives Nicole a believable reason to keep filming while trapping her in an increasingly hostile situation. The performances help sell the disturbing dynamic between her, Blair, and especially Thistle. While it may be divisive because of its subject matter, the realistic presentation, strong character work, and the unsettling commentary make it an effective, low-budget horror entry worth seeking out. So my rating here then for the Rebrand, I give a 7.5 out of 10, and this should be hitting VOD here soon if it hasn't already. Then up next is my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch of Tremors 2 Aftershocks. This is from 1996, directed by S.S. Wilson. It was written by Brett Maddock and Wilson. So this stars Fred Ward, Chris Garton, and Helen Shaver. This is a B-horror, monster horror, action, comedy, sci-fi thriller, and a western. So it's from the United States. This is currently set on a 6.0 on IMDb and on Letterboxd a 2.9. So synopsis. Earl Bassett, now a washed-up ex-celebrity, is hired by a Mexican oil company to eradicate a graboid epidemic that's killing more people every day. However, the humans aren't the only ones with a new battle plan. So this one, Earl is being reprised his role by Fred Ward. So I actually remember when this film came out. The original one was one that I used to watch with my father as he was a big fan of it. He would still turn on the first one if he sees that it's on and it's playing and everything. It always seemed to be on like TNT or a channel similar to that. Now, I'm pretty sure he rented this one when it came out, and I think we watched it as a family. So I've seen parts of it throughout the years. It's one that I don't think I ever really watched all the way through again until doing it for, I believe this would have been for the Summer Challenge series. And then I'm now doing it as a Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch with a critical eye. So I remember this one being fun, and it holds up there. It is interesting because this sequel has similar premise to the original. What makes it better is that it's poking fun. So we have this character of Grady, who's the new sidekick, and they actually make jokes about it. He is portrayed by Garton, and I just love that they kind of, since they couldn't get Kevin Bacon back, and he's taking over for like that Valentine character. And in a similar fashion, we have Kate, who is portrayed by Shaver, and she's the love interest for Earl in this one. There's just so many callbacks and kind of doing things that we'd got in the original one, just kind of doing things a little bit different, especially with like the graboids. So if you know anything about my tastes, you know when it comes to sequels that I don't necessarily like to recast actors. I think it's great that Ward and that Michael Gross comes back as Burt Gummer. And then it does sound like they were trying to get Bacon, Reba McEntire, and Finn Carter back, but things just kind of didn't work out, and they made up reasons why they wouldn't. And so that's the biggest thing with how dangerous this is. And so I think that's kind of good there. And they just kind of replace the characters, and that works for me. Not everything works, though. I do have some issues with the update to the graboids. The first film succeeds because the characters learn through trial and error to survive. And while the sequel has that, it's a different form. My problem is that the reproduction does not fit the original form. The film seems to hope that you don't question it. So I just want to know how these creatures become the graboids from the first movie. Maybe not. Maybe this is kind of like how a caterpillar will become a butterfly, and so like the new form are these smaller ones. So maybe later sequels will explain some of the things. But for right now, I just feel like some things are left unanswered, and it bothers me. Not enough to ruin this though. So despite how I like how the film adds difficulty through evolution. Earl has a fun subplot about past glory. His 15 minutes of fame are over, but bad investments have left him broke again, and he treats the graboid problem like a job to finish. Burt, meanwhile, is driven by his obsessive need to defeat the enemy. I like this contrast along with the blue-collar survival element. So that should be enough for the story. Let's go to the filmmaking aspects. I think that this is a strong feature, tight, efficient pacing. Despite its B-movie status, the cinematography effectively captures the refinery's isolation, and the blend of practical effects and the judicious CGI for complex movements work well. Additionally, the attack scene, sound design, and music are all highly effective. I'll then end this out with the acting performances. We have a small, solid group of actors. Ward perfectly embodies Earl, while Garton proves to be an effective replacement sidekick. I like that he's not trying to be Valentine, but Grady, so that does help as well. So Shaver is a welcome addition, and the return of Gross adds the signature over-the-top energy, and the rest of the cast round this film out effectively. So in conclusion, this succeeds as a fun, self-aware sequel that effectively balances B-movie charm and a strong pacing and solid character dynamics, despite a small issue with the biological evolution of the graboids and lacking explanation. This is mitigated by the sequel's clever meta-commentary, effective use of practical effects and CGI, and charm performances from the core cast. Ultimately, this serves as an entertaining blue-collar survival story. So my rating here for Tremors 2, Aftershock, I give this one a 7.5 out of 10, would recommend it. Then I have a rewatch here of A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is the remake from 2010, directed by Samuel Bayer. This was written between Wesley Strick and Eric Haschener. So this is starring Jackie Earle Haley, Rooney Mara, and Kyle Gallner. This is a serial killer, slasher, splatter, supernatural horror, suspense, mystery, teen drama, crime film that's from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.2 on IMDb and a 2.2 on Letterboxd. So this one, the synopsis is: the specter of a disfigured man haunts the children of the parents who murdered him, stalking and killing them in their dreams. So I did cover this one previously. That would be bonus episode number 17 with Jamie. I think we watched the original one and this one as well and covered them both. So this is one that I enjoyed the first time I saw it. That would have been in the theater. Did I think it was better than the original? Not even close. I still thought it was a solid remake. I've seen this a couple more times since then. I've heard the hate. I can understand it. This is one, like I said, that Jamie and I watched. I think she actually watched this originally by herself before she met me, and then we watched it together. We did a bonus episode, and I'm doing a rewatch here as a journey through the aughts. And where I'm going to start is, once again, kind of saying, is it as bad as people say? No. Are there issues? Absolutely. I could also nitpick the original one as well. I don't think this is great. I still think it does things well. Let me start with a positive. I think that Haley is a fine dark Freddy. Though less menacing than England when he went dark with the character, while officially establishing him as a child molester makes it difficult to root for him, and the lack of the sequels like comedy as a drawback, my perspective as a parent helps me to understand the creative intent, the built-in biases, and something that just kind of causes issues in my opinion. Now, something else that I think here is that I see some negatives here about people like with the micronap concept that's introduced. So I found a clever addition to explain that characters, walking hallucination by suggesting the brain mimics sleep when exhausted. Although it feels like a stretch as people will inevitably crash, I appreciate how it effectively blurs the lines of reality and makes the narrative easier to understand. There are many of my favorite films that will introduce like pseudoscience ideas that are specific to that world. How it works makes sense to me. One last bit is I don't know who in the story you should root for. The original one didn't necessarily either. We have, Freddy killing the teens. It seems like he's pushing that he was wrongfully accused. There's a reveal near the end that I started to loathe. What I will say is that the most recent watch, it actually makes it just darker. It's getting revenge, but not necessarily for the reasons we would expect or think. So I think this film explores themes of repressed memories and childhood trauma centered on parents using therapy to conceal past events. Dean, who is portrayed by Kellen Lutz, his unraveling reveals the resulting distrust and demonstrates how sins of the parents are revisited on their children. Additional themes include like collective gaslighting, the loss of innocence, and psychological toll of sleep deprivation. Then to the acting performances, Haley delivers a dark Freddy who handles the character's signature one-liners well, though the makeup suffers from over-reliance on CGI. The supporting cast, I think that Rooney Mara as Nancy Holbrook is fine. Quentin Smith as Gallner, I think he's good as well. They're solid despite limited material. I also like that we have like Clancy Brown, Connie Britton. There's also Leah D. Mortensen. I think they're all good as parents who have misguided protective instincts, ultimately harm their children. I'd also give credit here to Katie Cassidy. There's Thomas Dekker, Kellen Lutz. Are they good? Or are they great? No, they're fine for what was needed here, though, especially for a slasher film. All that's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. I'd say that largely they're effective, particularly the brutal kills and the unsettling dream to reality transitions. While the over-reliance on CGI for Freddy's burn makeup is a drawback, the cinematography is solid and the soundtrack serves the film well. Notably, the sound design incorporating whispers and the scraping of metal adds an essential layer of creepiness. So in conclusion, this 2010 remake fails to surpass the original and suffers from over-reliance on CGI. It remains far better than its reputation suggests. It introduces intriguing narrative concepts like micronaps, boasts effective sound design, and features solid performances that distinguish it as a competent, dark entry into the genre. Though it has its flaws, it stands as a respectable supernatural slasher that doesn't necessarily live up to the hype of the franchise. So my rating, though, I've stuck with this rating the last couple times I've seen it, and I give the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010 a 6.5 out of 10. And then I have a review here of We Go On from 2016. This is written and directed by Andy Mitten and Jesse Holland. This stars Clark Freeman, Jay Dunn, and Annette O'Toole. So the genres here, drama, horror, mystery, thriller. This is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and Letterboxd is 3.0. Our synopsis, Miles Grissom offers $30,000 to the first person who can prove to him that we go on after death. Now, he's portrayed by Freeman. So this is one that I learned about thanks to podcasts. It would have been around the time that I started listening, and there were shows that were discussing this. It went on my list of ones to see at some point. Now, since it was next up, I elected to watch this one here from that long list that I have. So this is a scouring through the Sixes watch as well, just kind of happenstance there. Where I want to start is by saying that I find this concept to be interesting. Trying to find proof of the afterlife is something that I've seen used before. I do like the concept of putting an ad out and then needing to wade through all the responses. That'd be a daunting task in itself. The build-up here is that we have 3 selected, all appear to be frauds. That is until things start to get more revealed. That hooked me, especially after we meet this character here of Nelson, who is portrayed by Jay Dunn. So Miles, our protagonist, carries the film as his quest for answers. While he has all these paralyzing fears, most of them kind of boil down to just being afraid to die. That can be difficult to watch. Freeman delivers a convincing performance. It does mimic people that I've met or seen, not to this extent, but on a lesser degree. He excels at conveying deep trauma and terror, especially during his interactions with the people that he is trying to potentially see if they can help explain it. There's like Dr. Ellison, portrayed by John Glover. There is a medium of Josephina, portrayed by Giovanni Zacharias. And then, of course, Nelson. I will say a common theme is that people don't like this, and it is directly tied to his portrayal, which I completely understand. I will then say the supporting cast is interesting. Miles is offering a lot of money that makes sense, that his mother of Charlotte would come to protect him, and she is portrayed by Annette O'Toole. What I like is that we get this flashback to when she was younger and Miles' father was still alive. There seemed to be like a hereditary issue there that is kind of something that kind of happens here, kind of plays in. We do see that they kind of had a good rapport, though, the two parents. Something that happened and young Miles might have been shielded, leading to certain beliefs, getting back to what was offered. It does bring out a lot of people trying to sway him. Dr. Ellison and Josephina have different approaches to the same conundrum. I appreciated that aspect. Now, the other themes to include here would center around what Miles is looking for. He must come to terms that peace doesn't come from obtaining absolute truth. If anything, it creates different issues that might need to come to terms with there. I do like this idea that he puts forth like almost a shared humanity of the living and the dead. There is a line that is walked between maternal protection and her allowing her adult son independence. We might have this, like, I think the term is thanatophobia or something along those lines. It's an intense fear of death. We also have existential dread and the burden of trauma and the loss that's also explored. So that should be enough of the story. Let's go over to the cast. And I thought the performances were effective. While Freeman fits the lead role well, Dunn significantly ramps up the tension and horror after appearing midway through the film. Glover and Zacharias deliver solid work, and O'Toole is convincing as his overbearing mother. Additionally, we also have Laura Heisler. She gets introduced as an interesting dynamic as a character of Alice. Overall, the acting supports what the film needs. All that's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. I do think the cinematography and framing were solid. They do some interesting things, especially when there's things that are supposed to be more atmospheric. This then does shift to more jump scares after the catalyst event happens. I did like the connection that is made with the voicemail to something that Miles saw. There aren't a lot of effects here. What they do and what seems to be done was practical, so credit there. Other than that, I do think that the sound design and music fit for what was needed. In conclusion, this stands out as a thought-provoking exploration of existential dread and thanatophobia, anchored by compelling, high-concept premise. While the protagonist's paralyzing fear may be intense for some viewers, the solid performances, particularly from Freeman, O'Toole, and Dunn, effectively ground the film's emotional weight. With its atmospheric cinematography, practical effects, and meaningful examination of trauma and loss, it succeeds in delivering a unique, haunting experience that balances character study with horror elements. So my rating here for We Go On, I give this one a 7 out of 10 and would recommend it. And then I have my rewatch here for a 2026 wide release of Undertone that actually came out last year officially, but, wide release this year. So, written and directed by Ian Tuason. This is starring Nina Kiri, Adam DiMarco, and Michelle Duquette. So this is a folk, monster, psychological, and supernatural horror film, as well as some sci-fi and thriller elements. This is from Canada, currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd. Did a previous review, so if you'd like to hear more, that's going to be featured on episode 333. Direct you over to that one, but the synopsis here. The host of a popular paranormal podcast becomes haunted by terrifying recordings and mysteriously that was sent her way. So this one here, A24 psychological horror, centers on a paranormal podcaster of Evie, portrayed by Kiri, who received unsettling auto recordings by her co-host, who is voiced by, his name is Justin, he's voiced by DeMarco. And they're going to do this on a podcast, kind of listen to them, get their reactions and everything. But Evie is a primary caregiver for her dying mother. So the sound design, MVP. The film lives up to its title for me. The sound design is incredibly immersive and serves as the movie's greatest strength. It's an experience that holds up well in the theaters. Though headphones, I would do at one point want to replicate that intensity at home to see if it kind of does anything there. I almost want to put them on while she does and then take them off when she doesn't. I did watch this a second time on my TV, but both times I do think that it holds up. I do know some people had issues there. I will say, though, is that if it falls there, it would have fell apart for me overall. So we have some narrative parallels here. I really enjoy how the film uses auditory storytelling like headphones and phone calls to mirror Evie's real-life isolation and heavy psychological weight for caregiving duties. I do have a critique, though. This has its flaws. The plot gets repetitive, and the chemistry dialogue between Evie and her co-host of Justin feels forced and contrived, and it hindered the realism of a weekly podcast because they literally record for like 10 minutes, and then they're done. And I know that if your show is going to be longer than that, you need to have more time recording, but I digress. So, dynamic lore. It leans into some fascinating mythology here with this Abazu character, the demon, that's what its name is. It's supposed to be a baby snatcher. That I love how the film alludes to these entities and creates correlations between the demon's nature and Evie's personal struggles. So, haunting versus madness. I think it masterfully toys with the classic trope. Is it a true supernatural haunting, or is Evie just spiraling into madness? I prefer the supernatural route. This provides enough ambiguity to keep you guessing. So I do think for the lead performance here, Kiri does a great job in carrying this. She's the focal point, and you can see her breakdown accelerate as the recordings pull her deeper into the dark place that she's in. I think that despite some shallow plot points, and occasional forced character dynamics, it's a worthy atmospheric watch for anybody who believes what we hear can be just as terrifying as what we see. So my ratings actually come up. I was originally at a 7.5. I now bumped this up to an 8 out of 10. And then let me end out these mini reviews here with 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror. First is going to be Scream Queens. This one features the likes of Christopher Lee, Carol Borland, and Roger Corman. So this looks at female stars of horror cinema, including Jamie Lee Curtis and Fay Wray. So this one, screaming can be heard as far back as Phantom of the Opera with Mary Philbin. So Fay Wray was one of the early considered Scream Queens. Now, the classic one, Jamie Lee Curtis. John Carpenter helped put her on the map with things like Halloween and The Fog. She's given a lot of credit here. They interview a lot of these ladies that we kind of hear below. Linnea Quigley, of course, Return of the Living Dead, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. Brink Stevens from The Haunting Fear. We also have the lady from Mark of the Vampire, Borland. It caused her to be typecast. I don't necessarily know if she completely hated it, but I can understand where she had probably wanted to do a little bit different things, but couldn't. This does some deep dives, though, into some of the ladies from the 50s and 60s. This could include, Gloria Talbot, who is in The Cyclops. We have Beverly Garland from It Conquered the World. Roger Corman actually talks about working with her. We have Revenge of the Monster, which featured Laurie Nelson. Peggy Moran, she was a contract player for multiple Universal films. Did ones like Horror Island. I have not seen that one. I do own it, and it is on my list to check out. I haven't got around to it yet. We get to see Carolyn Monroe. She is, as gorgeous as ever in this. She was in Dracula 80, 1972. Evelyn Ankers is credited. She had passed away already. I have seen her in a good number of films, and she actually married Richard Dennings, who gets interviewed here and talks about her. Hazel Court was in a number of Hammer films. She gets interviewed as well. And they also talk about Barbara Shelley, who is a Hammer regular, and she actually worked with Christopher Lee quite a bit. They kind of all culminate this with talking about, once again, Fay Wray, made very popular by King Kong, amongst other things from those eras. But for me, I thought this was a rather interesting one that I gave a 7 out of 10 to. And then episode 16 is going to be Girl Ghouls. This one features Lee Corman and Robert Corthenwaite. I think about how you say that last name. But this looks at female antagonists in horror films just kind of in general. Kind of an interesting thing there for sure. But this one, we have some cheap tricks. Originally was to kind of just change it from a male monster and then change the sex into a female monster. This started with things like Dracula's Daughter, originally conceived to be a drop chapter by Bram Stoker in the original novel. That's where they kind of got a lot of the stuff there, I guess. She-Wolf of London and Daughter of Dr. Jekyll tended to shy away from actually being a monster and using more of other explanations, like maybe they're gone crazy or something along those lines. Cry of the Werewolf is another of these films. Fun to hear from these actresses in these and how far they went to try to break away or to try to get what they could. They talk about Captive Wild Woman and the Beast Lady films that featured Aquanetta. There's Velvet Vampire. This is kind of where they start to get a little bit more interesting. Brought up Barbara Steele, who was in a bunch of the Italian films like Black Sunday, worked a lot with Mario Bava. The Hunger with Catherine Deneuve and Susan Sarandon. That one is very kind of sexually charged. Hazel Court comes back in this one, talks about being in both sides of these roles in different films. Then they kind of move into the Whatever Happened to Baby Jane era that started the hagsploitation. They were taking on gothic themes and putting it in a modern setting. Betty Davis was also in The Nanny. Not seen that one. Didn't realize it was a Hammer film, actually. Pamela Franklin actually talks about working with Davis. And they bring up here and talk quite a bit about the Gorgon, trying to make a female monster from Hammer. Lee was actually a good scientist in that one, where Peter Cushing got to play the heavy, and then Barbara Shelley was also in that one. Then they bring up things like Carrie, how Stephen King, brought that up, and then how Brian De Palma brought that to life. Also, they talk about the Xenomorph Queen and how most of the Xenomorphs tend to be female. Then they actually talk to Brink Stevens, who brings up Martine Beswick, who was a Hammer young lady. She was in those type of movies. Ingrid Pitt also kind of started doing more of the villainous women. And then she brings up Linnea, Michelle Bauer, and Brink, how they were the modern 80s versions of some of these things, and they were the Scream Queens, who they actually just really kind of worked in the horror genre, not kind of just dabbling into it and then bouncing out of it. So I did appreciate some of the things she had to say there. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to a brief break before I get over to the main event here, my voyage through the fives.
Hey, with Rise Coffee.
And welcome to the main event here. Before I jump into my actual list and, give everything that I'm ranking and whatnot, let me kind of explain this. So my Voyage of the Fives, I started this a few years ago with different years, but Voyage of the Fives are anything that I watched that ended in year 5. So, 1925, 35, 45, and so on and so on. So this isn't a comprehensive list. This is just everything that I've covered since doing the podcast for the most part. There's a little bit of things that I have in there that kind of cheat a little bit, and I'll actually get into those if any of them pop up on this thing. But let me start off with doing my stats for everything that I've watched so far during the time of the podcast. So this list is going to be compiled from 292 films, 461.7 hours, 308 directors, 35 countries, 10 languages. So my top years, 2025, 117 films. That's a lot of it is because of screeners, doing my end of year list and everything like that. And then for 1995, 27 films. 2015, 23 films. 1935, 23 films. And then 2005, I had 22 films. Secondary genres that also pop up here. Thriller, 102 films. Mystery, 57 films. Comedy, 55 films. Drama, 53. Sci-fi, 45. Fantasy, 30. Action, 19. Crime, 17. Romance, 16. Country of origin, whoppingly and not surprisingly, United States is at 212 films. UK, 37. Canada, 19. Italy, 18. Japan, 9. France, 8. Germany, 7. Australia, 6. Spain, 5. Mexico, 3. So the top language is after English. Italian comes in with 12, Japanese at 8, silent film 6, Spanish 4, German 3, French 3, and Russian 2. So the top actors that are going to appear in this list are going to be Bela Lugosi at 8, Boris Karloff at 6, Barbara Crampton at 4, Judy Greer at 3, and she is tied with Lily Taylor, Tony Todd, Robert Englund, Larry Fessenden, Leland Orser, Alan Castanga, Flavio Mignozzi, Ian Wolfe, Jeff Strom, Felissa Rose, Valerie Hobson, Jason Brooks, Sarah Nicklund, and Eric Skyback. So top directors, Dario Argento's coming in at 4, Scott Derrickson 3, Osgood Perkins, Toby Hooper, and George A. Romero are tied with him. Guillermo del Toro is tied with Wes Craven, Wami Colette Serra, Darren Lynn Bousman, Mario Bava, Neil Marshall, Stuart Gordon, Stephen Cognetti, Sean Byrne, Jack Arnold, Brandon Christensen, Stuart Walker, Jeff Herberger, and Kelvin Maury McCarthy, all at 2 films. So then the highs and the lows. Highest average is going to be 7 at a 4.4. Lowest average is going to be Piglet at a 1.4. Most popular is Sinners at a 4.1. Most obscure and the newest is going to be The House on Hill Street. Oldest is The Bear's Wedding. Longest is actually kind of funny. It's going to be Leviathan, the Hellraiser documentary. And the shortest is going to be Hellraiser Revolutions, which I believe is another documentary there. So that's all the stats that I have there for everything that I've kind of ran through, kind of covered and everything like that. Let's then do the honorable mentions. All of these are at 7.5. They just missed out on making the list. So we have The Devil's Reign from 1975. That was on SideQuest episode number 11 where we covered that one. The Body Snatcher, 1945, mini review on episode 275. The Prophecy, the one from 1995 with Christopher Walken, mini review on episode 304. The Invisible Half, this is from 2025, was a mini review on 295 as well as episode 312. Now, Tinsman Road, 2025. This one actually is getting a wide release in 2026, but because I saw it at Nightmares Film Festival, feature review over on episode 311. Then Silent Night, Deadly Night from 2025, featured review on episode 320. Final Destination Bloodlines, 2025, featured review on episode 296, mini review on episode 314. Now Good Boy, 2025, was a featured review on episode 309, mini review on episode 320. Black Phone 2, 2025, mini review on episode 312 as well as on 321. And then the last honorable mention that I have here, just missing on the list, is going to be Landlord, 2025, featured review. Got to see this at Nightmares Film Festival. This one is on episode 311. I don't know if this one actually came out widely in 2025 or if this is one that also got kind of pushed back into 2026. I haven't really looked it up in a little bit here, so that's also partially kind of what's going on there. And then let me do my bottom 10 here. So this first one's going to be a screener. Got to see of Thou Shalt Kill from 2025. Did hear a mini review on episode 270. So just kind of show this list isn't all that bad because I didn't hate this movie completely. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 10, so right there in the middle as the lowest rated that I watched from, this section here. Or one of the lowest ones that I watched from this section here. And then Cursed from 2005. This is the Wes Craven film. Mini review on episode 297. I gave that a 4.5 out of 10. That's that kind of weird Christina Ricci werewolf film. Then I got to check out from 1935, Anchor. This is a featured review in episode 305. Gave us a 4.5 out of 10 as well. This one's more like a travel film where they kind of do some weird things and edit in footage so that I didn't really necessarily care for it, as you could tell. And then the R.I.P. Man. This one, technically a 2025 film, as it, I think, did festivals and people were watching it back then. But this one is actually getting wide release here in 2026, so this one is eligible for that list. But I did a mini review in episode 329. I got to see it as a screener. I gave it a 4 out of 10, unfortunately. Then a weird little low-budget film of The Legend of Blood Mountain. This one has multiple titles. This one, 1965, I gave it a mini review on episode 323, gave it a 4 out of 10 as my rating. Then I had this weird DVD combo pack that had The Ridge from 2005. I did a mini review back on episode 125. Didn't necessarily care for this film, gave it a 3.5 out of 10. And then another screener I got to check out was The House on Hill Street. This is from 2025, gave a mini review on episode 325. This one actually might be getting wide release in 2026 as well, I believe. But then this one I gave a 3.5 out of 10. Then I got to check out from 1935, The Sea Fiend. This one has a few different variations on it. It's not a great movie. Feature review on episode 301, 3 out of 10. Now, the first film on here that I've actually watched multiple times, I've seen it growing up and everything like that, was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation. This one's from 1995. Gave it a mini review on episode 297. I gave it a 3 out of 10. I know some people absolutely love this movie. Some people absolutely hate this movie. I think there's some good things, but it's just off the wall and goes a little bit too wild for me. And then the last film here, my worst film that I've watched from the Voyage to the Fives so far is going to be Howling New Moon Rising from 1995. Mini review on episode 318. This one gave it a 2.5 out of 10. This is barely a movie. It's one that is definitely very boring. Tries for some interesting stuff, like you're mixing Western stuff in with werewolves and whatnot. But yeah, it definitely just ultimately just falls short and not something that I necessarily care for. So that's all I'm going to do here then for this section here. So I've already ran through my stats, my honorable mentions, and my bottom 10. Let me go ahead, rest my voice, and when I come back, I will start doing my top 100 films for my Voyage to the Fives, and this is going to be films 100 to 76.
We're Seismic Cinema. I'm Colin. I've probably not seen it. Paul's watched it in the wrong order.
And I'm James, and I've probably written an essay on it. And that's Seismic Cinema. We believe in the power of escapism.
Oh, thank God for that. That'll do.
And welcome back. So as I was saying, my Voyage to the Fives. Let's start with my 100 to 76 on the list, and it's going to start at 100 with Snatchers from 2025. Directors are Craig Alexander and Shelley Higgs. Written by Alexander. This stars Hannah Mackenzie, Craig Alexander, and Josh Hoskins. So this is a comedy thriller horror film from Australia. A pair of lifelong friends try to make a quick buck by selling the organs of fresh corpses, but get thrown a curveball when she wakes up on the operating table. So the IMDb ratings, 4.5, and then Letterboxd at 2.0. I did a mini review on episode 298. So this is one I actually got to see as a screener when it hit Rain Dance Film Festival last year. So for the pacing atmosphere, this one has a tight sub 90-minute runtime that avoids filler, though it takes about 15 minutes to find its footing before fully pulling the viewer in for its psychological ride, at least for me. So character dynamics, it functions primarily as a character study exploring themes of trust and manipulation as the mysterious Jane Doe effectively pits two friends against each other by feeding them conflicting stories. So that's kind of the premise there, is that these two guys, they're here to harvest organs illegally, and then this Jane Doe that they're getting ready to do stuff on starts talking to them, so they don't know if she's actually alive. This might be just in their heads, but yeah, they start to see weird things, and then as it kind of slowly makes them turn on each other. Standout performance here would be Hannah Mackenzie, as she delivers an impressive range, shifting seamlessly from sweet, innocent persona for the pathologist Mac to a predatory, manipulative role for his friend Jason. So this has some genre ambiguity. While not a traditional high-octane horror film, it offers a subtle, unsettling atmosphere that plays with the audience's perception, leaving the viewer to decide whether the events are supernatural, logic, or purely psychological. So some technical polish here. The cinematography and framing is strong, utilizing interesting angles and unsettling visuals like the milky eyes. That effectively elevates the creepiness of the experience. So for me, I came in with a score of a 7.5 out of 10, so I mean, this could almost have been a honorable mention. It just kind of comes down to preference, but this is highly recommended watch for those who appreciate deep character work and narratives that reward personal interpretation. And coming at number 99 is going to be another one from Rain Dance Film Festival of Thenestra from 2025, of course. So this is directed by Nathan Hertz. This is written by Avra Fox Lerner. This is starring Melissa Macedo, and Gavin Steinhaus. So we have body horror here. This one is from the United States, and it's a young woman takes a new weight loss pill, and the fat she sheds returns in the form of her bloodthirsty doppelganger. So IMDb has this as a 4.4, Letterboxd a 2.8. I did a mini review on episode 296. So this one is a concept that is kind of pure and high concept. Now, the inevitable comparison here is that people are going to look at this and compare it to The Substance immediately because of the shared themes: weight, societal pressure, and miracle drugs with horrific side effects. But make no mistake, Thenestra carves out its own niche in the genre. So performances, this hinges on the performances of the Macedos. Michelle as a timid Penny and Melissa as a confident, passive, actually not passive, she is very aggressive Penelope. They bring a real multifaceted struggle to life here. While I have a minor quibble how it handles the physical portrayal of Penny's body size, the acting successfully carries the character study forward. So the practical effects here, we have this gross out factor. If you like your horror visceral, this delivers. The practical effects are top tier. The scenes where Penny is literally leaking fat are unsettling, and then they look incredibly real. It's greasy, it's gross, it's effective, plus a transformation to the feral monster version of Penelope. The earwork and creature design are fantastic. So for me, with strong cinematography, solid design or sound design, and solid supporting cast, The Nestra is a thought-provoking blend of psychological drama and body horror. It's a compelling watch that leaves a lasting impression. And this one, another one that I give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. Then over to number 98, Body Cam from 2025. This is directed and co-written by Brandon Christensen, and he co-wrote this with Ryan Christensen. This stars Jamie M. Calcia, Sean Rogerson, and Catherine Loge Hogquist. This is a found footage horror from Canada. 2 police officers investigate a domestic dispute, and there's an accidental shooting. Not wanting to be crucified by the public, the officers attempt to cover it up, only to uncover that the cameras aren't the only things watching them. So this one has a IMDb rating of 5.0. Then Letterboxd is a 2.3. This was a feature review on episode 311, because I got to go see this at the Nightmares Film Festival. So this one has some social commentary here, where it uses the found footage format to provide biting social commentary on modern issues, including police corruption and the homelessness crisis, effectively turning real-world anxieties into a trippy cosmic horror experience. It features strong, morally ambiguous performances from Kalika and Rogerson. So Bryce is portrayed as the impulsive, fearful officer, while Jackson represents the rational partner whose ethics are compromised by the pressure of the police brotherhood. So atmosphere versus effects here. This shines in its ability to build an unsettling Lovecraftian atmosphere, particularly with the setting of a creepy, powerless building. Though there are some slightly underwhelming CGI near the end, it doesn't quite land, but I still think it's an interesting little film, especially for the subgenres that it's in, cosmic and found footage horror. I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's a compelling, unique watch that succeeds grounding its supernatural dread in realistic, flawed human behavior. And then that'll take me over to number 97, which is Ash. This is from 2025 as well. This is directed by Flying Lotus. It was written by John A. Remler. It stars Isa Gonzalez, Aaron Paul, and Aiko Uwas. So the genres here, we have a lot. Alien invasion, body, folk, monster, supernatural, and psychological horror. Space, sci-fi, survival, whodunit, action, adventure, mystery, and thriller. This is from the United States. Synopsis: a woman wakes up on a distant planet to find that her crew of her space station viciously killed. Her investigation into what happened sets in motion a terrifying chain of events. So IMDb has this a 4.6, Letterboxd 2.3. Watch this twice. I did a feature review on episode 287, and then I did a mini review on episode 301. So what we have here is the pivot for this director here, where Flying Lotus delivers his most straightforward and cohesive narrative to date, while still successfully layering his signature surreal atmosphere. So we have a murder mystery at its core. This functions as a compelling mystery reminiscent of films like Identity. It keeps the viewer engaged by forcing the protagonist and the audience to question the nature of reality. We also have some effective narrative mechanics, like the use of the unreliable narrator feels well executed and logical rather than like a cheat, directly tied to the protagonist's medical condition and the hostile alien environment. Like she wakes up on this thing and she can't remember, and there might be a reason as to why that's the case. So we have some genre influences here. If you're a fan of like survival horror games akin to like Dead Space or Resident Evil, I appreciate the focus of like the point of view shots, environmental tension, and the claustrophobic dread of being stuck on a foreign planet. Production quality, I think the CGI is pretty servable, especially because they're trying to do some of these things that are very visually stunning that I don't know if you could do without. The practical effects are brutal and effective, and the overall sound design does heavy lifting to build the cosmic horror aesthetic. So for me, I thought this was a rewarding experience on a second viewing, earning a 7.5 out of 10. I give it a strong recommendation for sci-fi and horror enthusiasts who appreciate the psychological impact of kind of being out in deep space, being stranded on a planet, and all those type of things there. So yeah, 7.5 for Ash. And then number 96, I have The Surrender from 2025. This is written and directed by Julia Mack, stars Kate Burton, Colby Minifie, and Neil Sandilands. So this is a body, folk, monster, psychological, and supernatural horror drama thriller as well. This is from Canada. So our synopsis, a fraught mother-daughter relationship is put to a terrifying test when the family patriarch dies and the grieving mother hires a mysterious stranger to bring her husband back from the dead. So for me, the ratings, IMDb 5.4. Letterboxd 2.9. Did a featured review for this one on episode 292 and then a mini review on episode 305. So the vibe and the premise. A solid folk horror entry that was found on Shudder. It functions primarily as a character-driven family drama until the final act. So this one also has a study in perception. At its heart, there's a deep dive into how memories color our relationships, where we have Barbara the mother and Megan view Robert, who is the father, and he's the one who is bedridden and he is dying. They view him through completely different lenses, highlighting how resentment and personal history define their current conflict. So we have the slow burn reality. This manages expectations regarding the horror elements. This is a slow build that prioritizes psychological tension over constant scares. While it draws inspiration from something like A Dark Song, it doesn't quite reach those same heights. I will say we have a standout performance here by Cinephile. She's the engine of this film. Her emotional and physical range is excellent. Kate Burton provides a perfect cold foil, and Neil Sandilands is effective as unsettling as the facilitator of the ritual. He's actually this guy who comes to kind of do everything, and it puts everything truly in motion when it goes down. For the technical execution, this shines at its craft. The cinematography, especially the use of full frame and lighting, creates a palpable sense of unease. The sound design, especially the noises above the ceiling and kind of what the explanation is there. The makeup effects for these entities are significant highlights as well. For me, the final act struggles to fully stick the landing. It's a compelling, atmosphere-heavy watch for anyone who appreciates a narrative that favors character depth over traditional horror tropes. So my rating for this surrender, though, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. And then at number 95 here, Godzilla vs. Destroya. Original title is Gojira vs. Destroya. I probably mispronounced that. But this is from 1995, directed by Takeo Akawara. This is written by Kazuki Homori. And then they're also giving credit here to previous films of like Kori Kamigiku, Koichi Kawakita, Yosaku Nakano, Hideki Oka, Sogo Toyoyama, and Minori Toshida. This is starring Takira Tatsumi, Yoko Ishino, and Yasufumi Hayashi. So then the genres here: action, epic, dinosaur adventure, disaster, kaiju, monster, and supernatural horror, tragedy, action, drama, and sci-fi. Country of origin, this is from Japan. So the synopsis: after the aftermath of the Oxygen Destroyer brings forth Destroya, a beast intent on killing Godzilla who's on the verge of a nuclear meltdown. So IMDb has this as a 6.9. Nice. And Letterboxd 3.8. So previous one, I did a mini review on episode 302. So this is the finale of the Heisei era. So this is, concluding this chapter of the Versus Heisei era, acting as a poignant send-off that successfully ties up long-standing threads. So we have the original Sin narrative here. This bridges the past and the present by having the original 1954 Oxygen Destroyer serve as a catalyst for the current antagonist Destroya. It's a fresh critique on the franchise's history, suggesting that humanity's past solutions are responsible for creating our current threats. We have a strong human drama here that, unlike many entries, the human story is actually compelling. It focuses on the descendants of previous characters and features an interesting ethical dilemma involving Dr. Ijun, whose work on micro-oxygen to end hunger inadvertently leads to catastrophe. Practical versus digital. This one excels with its practical approach that they are known for. The suit work for Godzilla, Godzilla Jr., and the demon-like Destroya is fantastic, bolstered by excellent miniature work. The early CGI, however, doesn't hold up as well. It is forgiven given the era. So the pacing in the cast, this runs a bit long at 100 minutes. It maintains a good pace. Its downside is that some of the human characters are underdeveloped, occasionally disappearing during the second act, leaving one wishing certain roles had more screen time. So for me, though, final verdict, I give this one as well a 7.5 out of 10. It's a strong, memorable entry that balances exhilarating kaiju action with poignant themes, making it a required watch for any fan of the genre. So yeah, Godzilla vs. Destroya, 7.5 out of 10. So I actually realized when I was kind of running through some of these things, getting everything prepared, that there was a movie missing from the list, so that does push us down one position. So technically, this is actually going to be the 95th one, and the last honorable mention would drop off. The movie that was 100 would now be 101, everything like that. But number 95 is going to be Species from 1995, directed by Roger Donaldson, written by Dennis Feldman, stars Natasha Hendrich, Michael Madsen, and Ben Kingsley. So this is an alien invasion, erotic thriller, body, psychological horror, action, sci-fi film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and on Letterboxd a 2.7. The synopsis: a group of scientists try to track down and trap a killer alien seductress before she successfully mates with a human. So this one I did a mini review in episode 296. I've actually seen this one quite a few times just throughout the years for, it would just be on different things and whatnot like that. But so this one's an intriguing blend of sci-fi, horror, and erotic thriller that holds up remarkably well. This follows a group of scientists hunting Syl, who is actually Henstrich, a hybrid alien created from DNA signals received from space as she attempts to mate and propagate her species. So the nature of the monster is that Syl is fundamentally a creature of instinct. Her journey is defined by basic primal needs, food, shelter, reproduction, making her arc feel surprisingly naturalistic, even as she mimics human behavior to blend in. So there's some subtle storytelling here. Like the film excels at planting small, easily overlooked details like watching movies or reading about appearance changes, which Syl later uses to adapt and survive. It's a clever way to handle exposition through observation. And we have a thematic depth here. Beyond the creature feature, there's a strong critique of genetic engineering and playing God. It also tackles complex, uncomfortable themes of like sexual assault and power dynamics, moving beyond the standard like femme fatale trope into something much more dangerous. We have a good ensemble here. It's a star-studded cast with like Ben Kingsley, who's a convincingly arrogant lead. Madsen adds some necessary swagger, and there's a treat to see a young Michelle Williams in an early role. The group dynamic, empaths, scientists, and hunters adds a necessary layer to the investigation. Production quality, the practical effects by H.R. Geiger are fantastic and nightmarish, though the mid-90s CGI hasn't aged quite as gracefully. However, the cinematography is smart, framing help to mask some of those seams and maintaining the tension throughout its runtime. So for me, I think that this is a 7.5 out of 10. Species is better than it has any right to be. It seamlessly meshes genres, avoids feeling like it's a 100-minute runtime, and offers a thoughtful look at ethical dilemmas along its thrills. Definitely recommend for a rewatch. So then number 94 then, I have Castle Freak from 1995. Stuart Gordon is a director, written by Dennis Paoli. This is based, I think, loosely off of like an H.P. Lovecraft story. This is starring Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and Jonathan Fuller. It's a drama, horror, mystery, thriller film. This is a full moon film that was from the United States and Italy. Currently sitting on a 5.9. Letterboxd has it at a 3.1. So a man struggles to save his family from a strange, deadly occurrence in the castle they've inherited. So I did a previous review on this one. I was a mini review on episode 298. This is probably like the second time I've seen it. I know I tried watching it back in the day on VHS. It wasn't really what I was looking for. I didn't necessarily know what I was getting into, but then watched this for the Summer Challenge series originally, and then now I'm doing this here. So this is a dream team reunion as we have a powerhouse trio. We have director Stuart Gordon, Jeffrey Combs, and Barbara Crampton tackling a Lovecraft-inspired tale. It's exactly the kind of collaboration that brings a heightened level of quality to the genre, and it's more than just a monster here. While it's a creature feature, the film is surprisingly character-driven as it focuses on a family grappling with deep-seated trauma, alcoholism, a tragic car accident, and the weight of cursed lineage, which adds heavy emotional anchor to the scares. And we have a standout performance here. I want to give credit to Fuller. He plays a creature, though impressive makeup and physical mimicry of different things, he manages to make the monster tragic and compelling rather than the mindless villain. Then the technical craft, this excels in atmosphere, utilizing a beautiful Italian neo-Gothic setting. The practical gore is brutal and realistic, effective, complemented by Richard Band's haunting score. And for me, another one that I'm going to give a 7.5 out of 10 to. It's an intense, unflinching experience that's not for the faint of heart, but for fans of practical effects and character-driven horror, it's definitely a standout for the Full Moon catalog, and that is Castle Freak. The number 93 is going to be The Stuff from 1985. Written and directed by Larry Cohen. Stars Michael Moriarty, Andrea Marcovici, and Garrett Morris. So this is a body horror, B-horror, dark comedy, sci-fi film from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb, and Letterboxd has it at a 3.0. And the synopsis, a delicious, mysterious goo that oozes from the earth is marketed as the newest dessert sensation, but the tasty treat rots more than the teeth with unexpected consequences. So I did a mini review on this in episode 288, and then I jumped over to the Psychosemantic podcast for the first time to discuss this over there as well. So then the premise here. Larry Cohen gives us a delicious disaster, a sentient, all-natural, marshmallow-like goo bubbling up from the earth that's far more dangerous than it looks. Now, this is a satire. It's a sharp, satirical takedown of 1980s consumer culture, mocking both the health food craze and the absurdity of corporate advertising campaigns that sell a product without ever explaining what it is. So in the creature design, now, we have some production limitations here. The practical effects are standout. Think this like a grittier, parasitic, spiritual successor to The Blob with moments that effectively lean into genuine horror. A standout performance here with Moriarty. He turns in an enjoyable, over-the-top performance as a corporate spy, perfectly balanced by hilarious comedic timing by Morris and a rock-solid supporting cast. While the editing can feel admittedly manic and jarring, the plot has its fair share of conveniences. The film's intentional cheesiness is its greatest strength, landing at a solid 7.5 out of 10. And cult classic status for me. So then number 92. Another one's kind of in the similar vein, but a little bit more serious, is going to be Silver Bullet from 1985. Directed by Daniel Attias. Written by Stephen King, starring Gary Busey, Everett McGill, and Corey Haim. It's actually based on Cycle of the Werewolf by Stephen King, which is it's a novel, or it's a novella. Has some pictures in it, at least the version I have, and yeah, it's kind of a cool read. So this is a body folk werewolf horror. This is from the United States, Netherlands Antilles. This is sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb, Letterboxd is a 3.2. And this is in a small town, brutal killings start to plague the close-knit community. Marty Colas, something like that, a paraplegic boy who is convinced the murders are the doings of a werewolf, and that boy is Corey Haim. So this one here is a fun, nostalgic adaptation that skillfully blends King's classic kids on bike narrative with a gritty werewolf creature feature. So at the heart of this one here, it's anchored by the family dynamics between Marty and his sister Jane and their unconventional Uncle Red, who is Busey. The skepticism of the adults and the children's need to prove creates genuine tension, and this is effectively incorporating like Giallo-inspired detective tropes as the teens struggle to uncover the werewolf's identity while navigating the ignorance of the local law enforcement and the volatility of the townspeople. So the cast is what holds us together as well, with standout work from like Gary, Corey, and then there's also Megan, that's the sister. Everett McGill brings an imposing, necessary presence that anchors the film's narrative. We have some great practical effects here by Carlo Lombardi's creature work is commendable. While it doesn't hit the high watermark of the genre staples like The Howling or An American Werewolf in London, the practical effects are visceral, brutal, and effective. While it doesn't crack the top tier of werewolf cinema, it's a fun, whimsical, and brutal watch. It turns a solid 7.5 out of 10 for me, and is I highly recommend for fans of like 80s type horror films that fall into line like this. And then this one's a little bit of a cheat here, but I consider it to be dark enough, and that's going to be at number 91, is Corpse Bride from 2005. The directors here, Tim Burton and Mike Johnson, and this is written amongst John August, Carolyn Thompson, and Pamela Petler. And then the original characters by Burton and Carlos Grangle. And this is starring Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, and Emily Watson, at least the voices of all these people. So this is a dark fantasy, period drama, stop-motion animation, supernatural fantasy, comedy, drama, family, fantasy, musical, romance. This is a co-production of the United Kingdom and United States, currently sitting on a 7.4 and on Letterboxd a 3.9. When a shy groom practices his wedding vows and the inadvertent presence of a deceased young woman, she rises from the grave assuming he has married her. So I previously did a review of this one over on Journey with a Cinephile Presents Depth Dive, a deeper look at Johnny's feature filmography. The animation here, incredibly smooth, arguably surpassing the technical fluidity of A Nightmare Before Christmas, but this features is a clear and visual influence from German Expressionism. The story moves beyond a simple premise to explore heavier topics like the societal pressures of arranged marriages, familial obligations, and the weight of keeping one's word. Johnny delivers a strong performance as the nervous Victor, while Helena adds necessary depth and sadness to the role of Emily. The voice work of Emily as Victoria, this is Emily Watson, and the supporting cast really helps to bring this world to life and everything. And when they go to the underworld, it gets really kind of dark there. There's some cool little kind of homages to that and everything. Clocking in at a brisk 7 minutes, though. This is well crafted, efficient film that serves as an excellent gateway horror film for younger audiences, and I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. And then number 90, Saw 2, 2005. This is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, written by Lee Winnell, and then Bousman also helped write this one. This is starring Donnie Wahlberg, Beverly Mitchell, and Frankie G. So this is a psychological splatter suspense mystery, horror film. This is from Canada and the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.3. And this one is a detective and his team must rescue 8 people trapped in a factory by the twisted serial killer known as Jigsaw, Tobin Bell. So this one did a review here on a mini review on episode 49. I've seen this one a handful of times though throughout the years for just different reasons and everything. I actually saw this one in theater when it came out. So the nostalgia goggles check here. It's a classic case of rewatching a former favorite with fresh critical eyes. I used to think this one outdid the original, but with reevaluation proves that the theater exit hype doesn't necessarily translate to long-term quality. This one I like that it's building on the franchise. I give props to how a sequel takes the original concept and scales it up. We've got 2 interconnected games running simultaneously, which is an ambitious narrative choice, while it feels a bit bloated at times. So Wahlberg, though, absolutely sells the like dirty, falling apart cop persona. Bell is always great as the definitive Jigsaw. He brings a believable mastermind energy to the role. The trap game here, I do think that the practical effects are a high point. The needle pit is a standout. The visual presentation is a sticking point. That persistent green filter and some erratic editing towards the finale really kind of clash with the film's gritty aesthetic. So my biggest gripe here is the character development for the supporting cast is thin, and the moral justification for the trap is a little bit shaky. It feels like some characters are being punished for things that they didn't really commit. So for me, this is an above average sequel that's worth a revisit if you're a fan of the lore, even if it doesn't kind of hit the heights of the first one. But my rating here, though, 7.5 out of 10 for Saw 2. And as we move into the 80s here, 89, we have Dante's Inferno from 1935, directed by Harry Lackman. This is written by Philip Klein and Robert Yost. The original writer here is Dante Alighieri. This is starring Spencer Tracy, Claire Trevor, and Henry B. Walton. So not everybody considers this one a horror film. I will acknowledge that now, but this is a drama romance horror film in my opinion. So then this is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.6 in IMDb and Letterboxd at 3.3, where synopsis is a carny builds a gambling empire at the expense of his family's well-being. So previous review here would be a featured one on episode 306. So it often pops up on horror lists. It's best viewed as a moral drama and character study rather than a straight horror. It uses Dante's concepts as an allegory for the fall of the man consumed by greed, and that kind of leads to this idea here of the Icarus arc. Tracy carries the film as Jim Carter, a carnival hustler whose insatiable ambition mirrors the myth of Icarus. He's a fascinating, complex lead, a good father who is willing to sacrifice his family for his own rise to power. We have some highlight performances here. Tracy does anchor this. He's bolstered by a strong supporting work from Trevor and Walt Hall. Cinephile should keep an eye out here for a young Rita Hayworth in an early role. So despite some of the technological limitations of 1935, the cinematography here is impressive. The standout sequence are the practical effects and the immersive moving camera work, especially when they're trying to depict hell. So it's a compelling social commentary on capitalism and unchecked ambition. It doesn't quite fit the horror label, but it's poignant, moral fable worth visiting. I'm rating this one, though, as a 7.5 out of 10. Then at number 88, we have The Raven from 1935 as well. This is directed by Lou Landers. It was written by David Bohm. This is originally, loosely based off the Edgar Allan Poe short story, or poem, whatever that is. But this is starring Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and Lester Matthews. This is a crime horror film from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.8 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.3. And this one here is a brilliant surgeon with a morbid obsession for instruments of torture grows dangerously obsessed with a young socialite whose life he has saved. So this one here, we have a little bit of meta Poe concept. This is a standout because it doesn't just adapt Poe. It creates a meta-narrative where the antagonist, Dr. Volan, is possessed by Poe's work to the point of recreating his torture devices in a dungeon. So this almost makes it like the Pit and the Pendulum. So we have a dynamic duo, though. Karloff and Lugosi are clear highlights. It's a great shift in dynamic from the Black Cat, with Lugosi fully leaning into the mad scientist role. We have a narrative hiccup, though. While the Poe influence is clever, the subplot involving Karloff's character, who is Edmund Bateman, it feels a bit forced, serving primarily as a vehicle to get Karloff into the film rather than strictly necessary for plot points. We have some uneven performances, though. The supporting cast, especially Matthews as the hero, struggles to hold his own, sharing the screen with the legends like Karloff and Lugosi. Atmospheric filmmaking, despite the technological limitations of 35, the film succeeds with its old dark house atmosphere and effective use of framing, especially in the basement dungeon scenes. So this one I give a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's a highly recommended watch for anybody interested in classic Universal horror run, specifically for the Poe-inspired world building. And then coming in at number 87 here, one that I've watched throughout the years quite a bit, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning from 1985, directed by Danny Steinman. This is written by Martin Kitrosser, David Cohen, and Steinman. The characters are created by Victor Miller and Sean S. Cunningham. This is starring Melanie Kinnaman, John Shepard, and Anthony Barley, something like that. So this is a slasher and splatter horror, suspense, mystery, whodunit thriller from the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 4.8, Letterboxd 2.3. This is still haunted by the past. Tommy Jarvis, who is a child, killed Jason Voorhees, is sent to a secluded halfway house in the countryside where the killing of a young man triggers a brutal series of murders. And Tommy Jarvis in this is portrayed by Shepard. So this one I did a mini review on episode 132 and 207. So this is the Halloween 3 of the franchise. Much like that one, this entry stands to do something different with the series, taking risk and straying from the standard formula. This is a popcorn slasher. It delivers exactly with what you want from 1980 slashers. A high body count, solid practical effects, plenty of nudity, distinct recognizable characters. So this is an interesting one, though, for me. This excels by focusing on a traumatized adult Tommy Jarvis. The movie toys with the compelling idea that he might actually be the one picking up the mask, adding to the unhinged psychological layer of the character. This did have some censorship issues. The biggest frustration is the MPAA interference. The movie relies too heavily on cutting and then off-screen deaths, which neuters the impact of what could have made this even better with the practical effects. Some solid ensemble work. While nobody is winning an Oscar, the acting is perfectly serviceable for a slasher. Standouts would be like Kinnaman as Pam. I like Shavar Ross as Reggie the Reckless, who bring real life to the halfway house setting. Now, Manfredini's score, this isn't his absolute best work, but this is still effective, elevating the tension and remains a cornerstone of the slasher genre soundscape. So ultimately, it's an above-average entry that sits at about a 7.5 for me. It falls just short of being great, but remains a highly rewatchable and fun experience for any film or any fan of the series. Then at number 86, I have Trilogy of Terror from 1975. This is directed by Dan Curtis, written by William F. Nolan and Richard Matheson. I believe they also might have came up with some of the stories as well. Starring Karen Black, Robert Burton, and John Carlin. This is a psychological and supernatural horror thriller film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.1. This is a synopsis of 3 bizarre horror stories, all of which star Black in 4 different roles, playing 4 tormented women. So this was a mini review on episode 285, and this is a masterclass in 70s TV horror. The 75 anthology, directed by Curtis and written by Legend Matheson, proves that the television movies of the era could deliver high-quality atmospheric thrills without feeling constrained by the medium. So Black is a showcase. She is a tour de force performance where she embodies 4 distinct tormented characters, displaying immense range and emotional vulnerability. Then we also have the iconic Zuni doll. The final segment with Amelia remains the highlight, featuring the masterful sound design and practical effects that bring this terrifying Zuni fetish doll to life in a way that just feels effective today still. Beyond the surface level horror, which the story offers like a deep dive into female identity, social roles, and the psychological impact of isolation and power dynamics, particularly in the segments like Julie, Millicent, and Teresa. So the film expertly uses deception and reveals to keep the audience guessing, with strong support from actors like Burton and George Gaines, who effectively ground the escalating tension. So for me, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. It's a highly recommend revisit for any genre fan or cinephile interested in seeing the perfect convergence of strong writing, capable direction, and legendary lead performances. So then, number 85 here, Mad Love from 1935. This is directed by Carl Freund. This is written by P.J. Wolfson and John L. Balderston. This is written by Maurice Renaud, did the original source material. This is starring Peter Lorre, Francis Drake, and Colin Clive. So genres here, body horror, romance, sci-fi. From the United States, currently sitting on a 7.2 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.6. So the synopsis: in Paris, a demented surgeon's obsession with a British actress leads him to secretly replace her concert pianist husband's mangled hands with those of a guillotined murderer with a gift for knife throwing. That'd be a murderer. So for this one here, this was kicking off the discussion with this Freund classic, which serves as a fascinating companion piece to the other adaptations like The Hands of Orlok and The Beast with Five Fingers, which I also think that one features Laurie. And he's actually an absolute anchor in this film. His portrayal as the obsessed Dr. Gogol is chilling. He balances a stoic exterior with a simmering, dangerous rage that defines the entire movie. We have a shift in narrative focus that was kind of interesting. This has a bold approach by pivoting away from the pianist, who is portrayed by Clive, and his internal descent into madness, and instead focusing on the lens of the doctor's toxic obsession with the Drake character, who is Yvonne. So this one for 1935, the filmmaking remains strong. The cinematography, particularly in the framing of the hand transplant reveal, remains impactful, and the sound design perfectly complements the psychological tension. So for me, the commentary here is that if you're a fan of the behind-the-scenes like history, the audio commentary here by Steve Haberman is a must-listen. It adds great context to the cast and highlights the tragic loss of potentially darker scenes that were destroyed. So solid film, well-executed take on the source material that works largely due to the strong performances and moody atmosphere. So my rating here for Mad Love, I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. And then number 84 is going to be Strip Nude for Your Killer. Original title is Nude per l'Assassino. This is from 1975, directed by Andre Bianchi. This is written by Massimo Falsati. This is starring the lovely Edwidge Finch, Nino Castelnuovo, and Femi Bonucci. This is an erotic thriller, giallo, psychological horror thriller, slasher, splatter horror kind of mixed in there as well, mystery. This is from Italy, currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.6, Letterboxd 3.0. This is a fashion model dies during an abortion. A series of murders follow this tragedy. So this one here, first ever featured review I ever did. So episode 1. And then for this, dive into a gritty world of Bianchi's 75 Giallo. It kicks off with a botched medical procedure at a fashion agency, setting the stage for a classic mystery featuring a signature killer in leather and a biker helmet. So this is a pure, unapologetic 70s sleaze. It's got that thank you movie aesthetic with a plenty of nudity and funk-inspired soundtrack that perfectly captures a sleazy, atmospheric tone. This is a surprisingly good job here with red herrings, even for a seasoned genre fan. The mystery stays engaging. The killer's backstory offers an interesting, if slightly convoluted twist. It's got its flaws, a little bit rough edges here. The film is highly misogynistic, even for the era, and the effects are pretty basic, with the most kills happening off screen. Keep an eye out for those minor production gaffes. You might even catch like a dead actor taking a breath, anything like that. But for me, though, I still give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's not the absolute pinnacle of the subgenre, but if you're looking for a fun, sleazy, stylish, foreign horror watch, I would definitely direct you over to this one for your time, and it's got a great title as well, so I mean, that's also kind of there. Number 83, though, The Quatermass Experiment from 1955, directed by Val Guest. He also wrote this with Richard H. Landau. This is the original writer here would be Nigel Neal. This is starring Brian Donlevy, Jack Warner, and Margia Dean. This is a space sci-fi horror film from the United Kingdom, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.6, Letterboxd 3.3. Synopsis is Professor Bernard Quatermass, portrayed by Donlevy, there was a manned rocket ship that returned to Earth, but 2 of the astronauts are missing, and the survivors seem ill and unable to communicate. So for this one here, I watched this one for T-Puts. This was a Movie Club Challenge pick, and this is a standout example of 1950s sci-fi age leaning hard into horror. It effectively balances a procedural investigation, figuring out what is happening to these mutated astronauts. This would be Victor Caroon, with genuine creeping dread. Never gets boring, uses its short runtime perfectly. We have an interesting power dynamic, though. Donlevy is fantastic as a deeply arrogant, science-first Professor Quatermass. His unapologetic, science-above-all attitude makes him a compelling lead. Playing against him would be Warner's Inspector Lomax, provides a great, slightly bumbling counterpoint that keeps the character dynamics engaging. So for the practical effects, though, for a film over 6 decades old, the practical effects are genuine impressive. While the creature has some rubbery moments early on, the final form and the climax is solid, and the cinematography holds up remarkably well. It's an above-average sci-fi horror hybrid that successfully builds on a compelling mystery without relying on modern tension tropes. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. It has definitely left me eager to explore more of the Quatermass series as I continue on this journey here. So for number 82, The Student of Prague, which is the original title of Der Student von Prague. From 1935, this version is. The director here is Arthur Robinson. This is written between him and Hans Kaiser. Now, the original novel was done by Heinrich Galeen. This is starring Anton Walbrook, Dorothea Wieck, and Theodor Loos. This is a horror film from Germany, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.7, Letterboxd 3.4. And the synopsis is going to be a little bit lengthy here, but Baldin loves innkeeper's daughter Lydia, but is infatuated with the singer of Julia. She is kept by Baron Waldus. Dr. Karpus, jealous of the Baron, intervened in Baldin's pursuit, exacting a high price that endangers the life and sanity. So Baldin's going to be Walbrook. We have Lydia, portrayed by Edna Graff. And then we have Julia, is portrayed by Wieck. And then we have Waldus is going to be Eric Fielder. And then Dr. Karpus is Loose. So I did a feature review on this one on 287. Now, the Faustian twist here. The 1935 adaptation of the classic German tale, surprisingly modern for its chilling character study about Baldin, a man who trades his sentient dreamer side for the Faustian bargain to win the love of an opera singer, only to spiral into madness. We have the doppelganger effect here. The film leans heavily into the German roots of the doppelganger trope. Seeing Baldin's double appear in mirrors, visibly only to him, creates a fantastic sense of dread and effective visual storytelling. Standout performance here will be Walbrook. Carries the film brilliantly, perfectly transitioning from a cool, collected student to a manic wreck. He's matched by Luce, who brings an unsettling, devilish energy to the role of Dr. Karpus. For a film from the 30s, the cinematography and framing are top tier. The in-camera effects used to bring the two versions of Baldin to life are impressively executed and really elevate the atmosphere. So for me, solid 7.5 out of 10. The story beats might be familiar to fans of Faustian lore. It's a beautifully made, atmospheric, and highly recommended watch for anybody diving into early 20th century cinema. Then number 81 here. is going to be a documentary of a Serbian documentary from 2025. This is directed by Steven Biro, who also wrote this with Caleb Emerson, Aleksandar Rajovejic, and Sherjan Spajovejic. So this is featuring the likes here of Slobodan Bestic, Halina Gavrilovic, and Nemanja Jovanov. So this is a documentary horror that is from the United States and Serbia as a co-production. This is currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.5. The synopsis is an exclusive look at a Serbian film with never before seen footage from the film and the worldwide reaction to the one of the most talked about controversial films of the last decade. So this one here, I did a featured review on episode 311. This was Nightmares Film Festival that I saw this. So you don't need to sit through the controversial 2010 original to grasp this intent. This documentary effectively conveys the purpose behind the depravity without subjecting you to the extreme content itself. So political framing here, I've always heard about this, but this provides a crucial background on Serbia's history of political strife, which helps viewers understand the socio-political commentary and creative vision embedded in the original work. So I do think this is high-quality cinematography and framing for the doc. It uses behind-the-scene footage to demystify distressingly authentic effects, turning a disturbing experience into an educational look at practical filmmaking. So major highlights here would be the access to the cast and crew, specifically interviewing the director of Spajovic and writer Rajovic, conducted years apart, offering fascinating window into how their perspective on the project have shifted over time. They do it, I think, like 3 different time periods. So this smartly incorporates diverse viewpoints, including quotes from critics who both loved and hated the original, making it a compelling exploration rather than a one-sided defense. I think this is a well-crafted, sympathetic, and thought-provoking 8 out of 10 watch that offers a valuable look at the creative process behind one of the most polarizing films of the last decade. And that would be a Serbian documentary. So then for number 80 is going to be another doc here of Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2 from 2015, directed by Kevin McDunga. So this is written by Nicholas M. Helmsley and Gary Smart. This is featuring Oliver Smith, Doug Bradley, and Claire Higgins. So documentary, because it's about a horror film, I kind of consider it in genre. From the United Kingdom, this is currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.3 and Letterboxd at 3.3. Mini review I did on episode 288 if you are curious, but this is a feature-length documentary uncovering the history and the making of Clive Barker's Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2 films. So runtime challenge. I acknowledge that the daunting 8-hour original runtime found on Letterboxd, but I think I watched the more accessible 3-hour version on Screenbox, perfect for a podcast-style watch while you're at work or something along those lines, if that's how you kind of like to do things. So this is a comprehensive 2-part journey covering the original Hellraiser and its sequel, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, packed with interviews from like key cast and crew, including Bradley, Higgins, and the composer Christopher Young. Masterclass in effects. So the documentary truly shines in its exploration of the practical effects and makeup, offering a wealth of knowledge on the behind-the-scenes challenges that brought Barker's iconic creatures to life. So it's not just talking heads either. This doc expertly weaves in archival behind-the-scenes footage and images. We see like Bradley being transformed into Pinhead to vividly illustrate the stories being told. So for me, this is an essential watch for franchise fans that this deepens your appreciation of the films, earning a top-tier recommendation with an 8 out of 10 rating for me. So then, as we move into the 70s now, 79, another documentary of 1,000 Women in Horror from 2025, directed by Donna Davies. This was written by Alexandra Keller-Nicholas, who wrote the book I believe that this is kind of based from, and then she's also being featured here with Roxanne Benjamin and Akilah Cooper. Documentary horror from the United States, and then the synopsis here is going to be a lengthy one. Is horror a man's world? You might assume so, but you won't be thinking that way for long once you investigate the vast contribution women have made to horror films for well over a century. In 2020, award-winning Australian critic Heller Nicholas released the definitive book on the subject, 1,000 Women in Horror. This is like an encyclopedia work celebrating the many women, and this is from like 1895 to 2018. So we have like filmmakers, actors, producers, and technicians who have shaped the genre since the moment cinema's light first flickered. So this one is currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.2, Letterboxd 3.6. I did a mini review in episode 344. So I stumbled upon this one while browsing Shudder. It's an essential watch for seeking out the perspective beyond my own experiences as a white male. So the structure here brilliantly organized into 4 distinct life cycles and stages is kind of how they're doing this. So girls in horror, contrasting the innocence with subversion, like The Bad Seed, Interview with the Vampire. We have adolescence, exploring the puberty as horror, like Carrie, Ginger Snaps, Hellbender. Adulthood, deep dives into childhood, or childbirth, bodily trauma, and the complexities of rape revenge subgenre, like I Spit on Your Grave or Revenge. So then aging, honoring veterans here like Barbara Crampton, Lynn Shay, alongside horrors of aging seen in like The Relic and The Taking of Deborah Logan. So this is based on a definitive book of the same name. Like I said, it does a fantastic job celebrating women across filmmaking roles like directing, acting, producing, behind the camera, and that's just glossing over it a bit. Powerhouse roster of contributors here, including Heller Nicholas serving as the de facto host. We have Benjamin, like I said, Cooper, Bria Grant's also here, many others, all sharing incredible passion and insight. And then this is extremely professional. The editing seamlessly integrates clips from the films discussed and reinforces the arguments. So this is a great to-watch list for builders of like horror fans, especially if you might not know some of the ones that are here. This is a well-made wealth of knowledge that earns an 8 out of 10 for me. And then coming in at number 78, as we kind of wind down this section of the list, is going to be In Search of Darkness, 1995 to 1999 from 2025. Written and directed by David A. Viner. So this is featuring the likes here of John Carpenter, Corbin Burnson, and Heather Langenkamp. Documentary horror mystery is the genres. This is from the United States. It is currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.8, Letterboxd 3.9. Synopsis is celebrates and explores the movies that defined the era, from Scream's genre-shattering impact to J-horror's global emergence, from the mind-bending twist to Y2K apocalyptic dread, and from blockbuster hits to straight-to-video gems. So I did a mini review for this one on episode 343. Massive undertaking. This isn't just a documentary, it's a marathon. You'll need a few days to get through it. It's a perfect for background listening while you work, or there's plenty of visuals that demand you to look when the topic hits home. So a big thing here is context is key. What truly makes this era-specific deep dive stand out is how it frames the landscape of the late 90s. This connects like cultural events like I had no idea that the O.J. Simpson trial influenced the atmosphere of Lost Highway in ways that you completely shift your perspective on films that you thought you knew. Unbeatable guest list here. The wealth of knowledge is staggering. Hear an insight from industry legends and modern masters like John Carpenter, Heather Langenkamp, Doug Bradley, Mick Garris, and Mike Flanagan. Makes the runtime feel earned rather than excessive. And then you have the Scream factor here. My one major critique is the over-focus on Scream. Yes, its impact was undeniable, but the coverage felt a bit repetitive given the meta-commentary we've seen dissected 1,000 times before. So then there's gems versus hits here. Like the previous trilogy, the real joy for me is discovering the hidden obscure titles. While this installment leans a bit more towards the blockbusters compared to like my favorite, the third part of the 80s, it still strikes a great balance for any horror completionist. So technical excellence, the editing and compilation of footage is masterful. It takes a monumental amount of material and stitches it together so effectively that the length never feels like a burden. This maintains the incredible high standards of the franchise, even with a few nitpicks. It's beautifully crafted, comprehensive guide to 95 to 99 horror landscape, and I gave this one here 8 out of 10 as well. So then we're going to shift over to movies again that are not documentary, that is. So number 77, The Mother, The Menacer, and Me from 2025, directed by John Salmon. This is written by Chris Carvalho and Chris Plaushin. So this is starring James Austin Keir, Christine Spang, and Lorraine Bracco. This is a quirky comedy, drama, family horror film that's from the United States. Currently sitting on a 4.7 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.2. Synopsis: homelessly stuck in a dead-end job and forced to move in with his disapproving mother-in-law, Eddie Matthews sets out to make his Hollywood dream come true, urged on by his imaginary villainous companion who wants to be brought to life. And Eddie Matthews, that is, portrayed by Kerr. So this one here, got to see at Nightmares Film Festival, so it was a featured review on episode 311. So don't let the title fool you into expecting a traditional horror slasher. This is a quirky coming-of-age comedy about horror fan trying to get his pilot killing Karens off the ground while stuck in a dead-end job. So for me, powerhouse cast actually. The film's emotional weight rests on the cast. James and Christine deliver a sharp, highly relatable dynamic of a couple navigating the stresses of family life, while Lorraine shines as a disapproving but eventually supportive mother-in-law. There's some heartfelt resonance, which is why I rated this so high off that one watch. This feels as an unexpected way. It's a deeply resonant for anybody who's ever juggled creative ambitions, like doing this podcast with children, as my daughter keeps getting up while I'm trying to record this section here, and wanting to be like a writer or filmmaker is what I'm getting at here, with the realities of adulthood and family. There's some real authenticity to the film within a film segments. The production does a great job capturing the gritty, scrappy charm of small-scale horror sets, from the props to the blood and the guts. So for me, gave this one an 8 out of 10. It's a well-crafted, genuine, engaging blend of comedy and drama that manages to be both a love letter to the process of filmmaking and touching story about setting life's priorities. So yeah, that's one here is The Mother, The Menacer, and Me. So then the last film for this section here. There's going to be one that I also got to see at Nightmares Film Festival, Queens of the Dead, 2025, directed by Tina Romero. She co-wrote this with Aaron Judge. This is starring Jaquel Spivey, Katie O'Brien, and Quincy Dunn Baker. This is a zombie horror comedy from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.3 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.1. So synopsis. Drag queens and club kids battle zombies, craving brains during a zombie outbreak at their drag show in Brooklyn, putting personal conflicts aside to utilize their distinct abilities against the undead threat. So like I said, Nightmares Film Festival, so it's a featured review on episode 311. So premise here, imagine Shaun of the Dead, but more glitter and drag pageantry. It's a zombie satire set during a drag show in Brooklyn where a group of performers put aside their personal drama to survive what's going on, all while looking absolutely fabulous. So we have the connection here. It isn't just a gimmick, it's a genuine passion and passing of the torch. Tina Romero is the daughter of a legendary George A. Romero, helms the project, and you can feel the homage in the DNA of this. She manages to balance the Romero-style slow-moving zombies with vibrant, modern, unapologetic, queer sensibility, adding in that social commentary. So the acting is top tier for me, largely because the production prioritized authentic LGBTQ plus casting. Spivey and O'Brien anchor the film beautifully, while Dunn Baker provides fantastic comic relief as the outsider who gets a crash course on the scene. Also, we have a little fun cameo by Tom Savini, but it doesn't look the greatest there, I will say that. So this is a smart social commentary disguised as a gore comedy. The zombies aren't just hungry for brains, they're metaphorically tethered to their phones, mindlessly scrolling TikToks and Reels, a hilarious poignant nod to the mall-crawling zombies of Dawn of the Dead. If you're a purist who needs zombies to be the high-speed threats, you might find the slow-walking undead a little bit low on tension here. They also don't move all that as well as like they would in George's films, but this is just trying to be a pure, fun movie with the focus on character dynamics and satire, makes it an easy flaw to forgive. It's hilarious, heartfelt, and important entry into the zombie genre. Between the remix Day of the Dead score, the incredible drag performances, and the fabulous green glitter zombie makeup, this is an 8 out of 10 for me. That reminds me that even during the apocalypse, you got to serve a certain look, I guess. But yeah, so this one I might actually would come down if I've given it a second watch. I haven't done that yet. So yeah, what I'm gonna go ahead and do though, that's all I'm gonna do for this section here. Let me go rest my voice as I get into 75 to 51 next.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So here is going to be, as I was saying at the end of the last one, 75 through 51, and number 75 is going to start out with Scrooge from 1935. This is directed by Henry Edwards. This was written by H. Fowler Mere. Now, the original writer here is, of course, going to be Charles Dickens. This is starring Seymour Hicks, Donald Calthrop, and Robert Cochrane. So this is a drama family fantasy holiday horror film that is from the United Kingdom, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.4, Letterboxd is 3.0. Synopsis is, Ebenezer Scrooge, a mean old miser, hasn't a good word for Christmas, though his impoverished clerk Bob Cratchit and nephew Fred are full of the spirit. On Christmas Eve, Scrooge is visited by spirits of the past, present, and future. So this one here is, and Scrooge will be portrayed by Hicks, and we have Bob Cratchit by Calthrop and Fred by Cochrane. So this one here was a featured review on episode 303, and this was an unexpected find. This adaptation of the Dickens classic was a surprise discovery because I didn't even know it existed. I tracked it down due to being on this here, and intrigued by its odd classification as horror on Letterboxd. So for pacing and narrative, at a lean 78 minutes, this moves incredibly fast with zero filler. It strips down the classic story to its core, focusing entirely on Scrooge's journey without getting bogged down by unnecessary plot points. And the lead performance here, Hicks, is absolutely carries this as Ebenezer Scrooge. He perfectly handles the specific type of ornery, coal-hoarding miserliness that defines the character. Now, is this actually horror? Despite what you might see on like Letterboxd, I'd argue that it's not necessarily. It's definitely like a Victorian Gothic, but it leans more into the narrative arc than the actual scares. The decision to make the spirit of Christmas Past look like a regular person instead of leaning more into spectral visuals really dampens any potential horror impact. And for 1935, this holds up well. The cinematography nails the Victorian England vibe, using shadows to create an ominous tone, and design, like sound design, especially the knocking from like Jacob Marley, is surprisingly effective. It's a solid 8 out of 10, though. A concise, well-acted, heartwarming adaptation that proves you don't need fancy special effects to tell a great version of a classic story. So my rating here, then, like I said, 8 out of 10 for this version of A Christmas Carol, are under the name of Ebenezer Scrooge. So number 74, though, is going to be the amusement park. So this one's a little bit confusing because it's technically from 1975, but it originally then came out in 2019, where I got to see it. So this is directed by George A. Romero. It was written by Wally Cook. It stars Lincoln Mazel, Harry Allbacker, and Phyllis Casterweiler. This is a B-horror, folk, and psychological horror drama thriller film that's from the United States. This is currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb, and on Letterboxd it has it as a 3.4. And an elderly gentleman goes for what he assumes to be an ordinary day at the amusement park, only to find himself in the middle of a hellish nightmare instead. So I did a mini review on episode 83 for this one. So this was a lost Romero gem, originally commissioned in 73 as a director for hire project for the Lutheran Society. This film was recently found and restored back in 2019. It's a fascinating look at Romero's evolving directorial confidence outside of his famous zombie work. So it's an allegory for aging. Far from the standard horror, this functions as a nightmarish 52-minute allegory regarding the treatment of elderly, exposing the crushing reality of monetary limits and social neglect. So there's a documentary-style realism here. Despite its surreal nature, Romero utilizes minimal camera movement and a documentary-like approach to make the disturbing scenarios feel grounded and alarmingly real. Power of performance here. Mazel, the only professional actor in the cast, delivers an incredible performance as an everyman who is constantly beaten down by the system, while the use of volunteers for the remaining roles creates a surprisingly effective naturalistic atmosphere. So we have a tight, essential experience here. With a runtime that perfectly represents the viewer's time and conveys its message without overstaying its welcome, this is a highly recommended watch for any fan of the Romero legend. So this is an essential, albeit heartbreaking piece of filmmaking that captures a unique moment in the master director's career, and I give the amusement park an 8 out of 10. And then number 73 here, I have White Guilt from 2025. So this is written and directed by Marcus Fleming. This stars David Ajayi, Kimia Akpa, and Ella Bardot. It's a drama horror from the United Kingdom. Now, there weren't able to be rated yet on IMDb, so there's no average as of yet over there, but Letterboxd 3.5. The synopsis is 11 affluent white individuals in their 20s and 30s head off on a bus hoping to eliminate their white guilt. So this one here, I did a mini review in episode 299, and the concept is a sharp gut punch of a film. These individuals on this bus, they are going to be treated as slaves by black masters and overseers in a desperate attempt to performatively, eliminate their guilt. So this is an experience. It's a 62-minute breakneck speed descent into discomfort. While it's labeled as a horror film on Letterboxd, it functions more as a harrowing, visceral drama, an unflinching exploration of performative allyship, entitlement, and the complexities of power dynamics. So we have 3 characters here I really want to focus on. One is going to be David, who is Theo Watt. He's a standout performance. His character's deep, entitled racism is unmasked as he tries to protect Ellie, who is portrayed by Freya Crompton, who initially resists. We have Bola, portrayed by Akpa, a new guard whose journey from just a job mentality to finding dark satisfaction in his power is chilling. Then we have Sally, who's portrayed by Tamika Thompson. Now, this is the group's mixed race participant who adds a layer of tension, especially when she scolds Bola for trying to befriend her. So then filmmaking here, the direction excels in making the audience feel like the guards. The cinematography uses unnerving camera, sway, and drab color palette that effectively communicate a total lack of joy. Practical effects and fitting soundtrack enhance the narrative. The bottom line, this is a thought-provoking film for our troubled age. It forces a difficult conversation about who is truly in power and how quickly performative actions crumble under the reality of exploitation. It's a must-watch for visceral analysis, and even the subject matter makes it a tough one to sit through. So my rating here then for White Guilt, I give an 8 out of 10. Then number 72, I have Tribe from 2025. Written, directed, starring Dan Asma. This also has Nicole Jones and Taiwana Bowman. This is a found footage horror film from the United States. It is currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.1, Letterboxd at 2.25. So we have a synopsis here of a desperate man lost in the West Coast mountains must reconstruct his past to step back from the edge of insanity. I got to check this out as a screener, actually. So I did a mini review on episode 302. And this is an ambitious found footage horror film where a man is forced to reconstruct his past insanity after discovering his late friend's connection to a sinister offshoot of a Mormon cult. So this is inspired by cosmic horror of H.P. Lovecraft and conceptual depth of Philip K. Dick. This excels like a rabbit hole mystery, effectively pulling the audience into Devon's desperate investigation through discovered drives, and that would be like hard drives for like computers and expert analysis. So the found footage style is used effectively here to heighten the isolation and tension with creepy imagery and sound design, creating a grounded, realistic feel that immerses the viewer. Now, standout performance here, Asma carries this with convincing portrayal of a psychologically deterioration, supported by solid cast here, including Jones, who's his ex-wife, and Bowman, who's an investigator who brings credibility to the plot. While the film is conceptually strong, the visual execution is inconsistent. The CGI effects are somewhat uneven. The climax ultimately falters compared to the intensity of the buildup. And for me, though, I give this a solid 8 out of 10, especially if you like found footage aesthetic, though your mileage may vary depending on your patience for the stylistic choice. So then for number 71, The Black Room from 1935, directed by Roy William Neal. This is written by Arthur Strawn and Henry Myers. This is starring Boris Karloff, Maria Marsh, and Robert Allen. This is a horror film from the United States, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.9. Nice. And Letterboxd 3.4. So ignoring an ancient prophecy, evil brother Gregor seeks to maintain his feudal power in his Tyrolean estate. So there are twins here, portrayed both by Karloff. And I think he does well with playing the ruthless Baron Gregor and his gentle brother Anton. The film showcases his range as he balances a tyrant against the man seeking to renounce his title. So Gothic narrative here, the story is a tight exploration of self-fulfilling prophecies, the burdens of nobility, and the psychological patterns humans use to correlate unrelated events. While the cinematography and costumes capture the era's aesthetic effectively, the film is a clear product of 35. It features limited special effects, relies primarily on story and performance to drive tension. So the depth here, Karloff carries his production. The solid cast is serviceable. We do have a character here of Thea, portrayed by Marsh, where she is functional to the plot but lack the significant depth found at the central conflict. So this is just a lesser talked about entry of the genre that rewards viewers interested in 30 cinema, and I give this one an 8 out of 10. And then the last film here for the 70s, The Addiction from 1995, directed by Abel Ferrara. This is written by Nicholas St. John, stars Lily Taylor, Christopher Walken, and Annabella Scoria. So this is a psychological drama, vampire horror, and just drama in general from the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.5, Letterboxd 3.6. Previous review of this one, I did a mini review on episode 228. I've seen this about 3 or 4 times though, just throughout the years. So this one is a New York philosophy grad student turns into a vampire after being bit by one, and then tries to come to terms with her new lifestyle and frequent craving for human blood. So this one, of course, the vampire is a metaphor. Ferrera's it's not a traditional one. It treats the vampire condition as a visceral, gritty metaphor for drug addiction and the AIDS epidemic, anchored by a deliberate, low-budget aesthetic that feels purposeful. So then, we got a lot of philosophy and nihilism here. The film's brilliance lies in making the protagonist a philosophy student, allowing her descent into vampirism to mirror her existing cynical look on human nature, specifically the idea that humans are fundamentally garbage. So stark cinematography, choosing to shoot this in black and white was a stylistic masterstroke, adding an atmospheric layer to the New York City setting while masking the limited budget and making the gore feel significantly more visceral. So we got some choices here for the soundtrack, particularly the inclusion of rap tracks like from Cypress Hill and Onyx. They're not just background noise. They directly reinforce the film's title and central theme of getting high. So Lily Taylor is a driving force, portraying the lead's head case mentality with chilling effectiveness. Christopher Walken delivers a solid supporting performance that proves a necessary foil to Taylor's character. We have the glass house critique. Beyond the elements there of like horror, the film offers a scathing commentary on higher education and moral hypocrisy, questioning how we judge others while living in our own metaphorical glass house. So this is not going to be a film for everybody or like even a casual Friday night watch. It's a thought-provoking, slow-paced art house experience that demands patience but rewards the viewer with a dark, intelligent, stylistic exploration of the human condition that I give an 8 out of 10 to. And then coming in at number 69, nice, is going to be Werewolf of London from 1935, directed by Stuart Walker, written by John Colton. Now, the original story was done by Robert Harris, and this stars Henry Hall, Warner Oland, and Valerie Hobson. This is a dark fantasy, werewolf, horror, drama, fantasy film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and Letterboxd as a 3.0. And a strange animal turns a botanist into a bloodthirsty monster. So I did a featured review on episode 283, and I think this is an underrated classic that it doesn't get enough love. It's a largely forgotten Universal film that actually pioneered the full moon werewolf lore before the Wolfman fully codified it. So we have this mad scientist twist. Rather than a typical monster movie, this plays with the mad scientist tropes. Here we have Dr. Wilfred Glendon, a botanist searching for a rare Tibetan flower, and his journey evolves from simple research into a desperate, tragic quest for a cure. And we have a nuanced protagonist. Dr. Yagomi isn't your standard villain. He serves as an expert who warns Glendon, but his own secrets and motivation make him a compelling, morally gray character brought to life brilliantly by Oland. So the visuals hold up. The transformation sequence, cinematography, and framing are all genuinely impressive for the era. Even the creature design, retaining a recognizable human-like appearance, feels effective and distinct. So I have a cinephile nitpick here. I have to acknowledge the logic flaw. Moonlight is just reflected sunlight, so why does it trigger the curse? But frankly, in a film that's atmospheric, it's a forgivable quirk that doesn't ruin the ride. So solid performances from Hull and Hobson and a perfectly blend of creature horror and domestic drama. This is an absolute gem. It's an 8 out of 10. Essential viewing for anybody who loves classic horror. And if you're a werewolf fan, I would definitely recommend, kind of checking this one out for more of that history. And then number 68 is going to be Eyeball. Goes by the original title of Gatti Rossi in un Lambertino di Vetro. So this is from 1975, directed by Umberto Lindsay, who co-wrote this with Felix Tussell. This is starring Martine Brochard, John Richardson, and Inez Pellegrini. So this is a slasher, horror, crime, mystery thriller film. Kind of a giallo in there, I would say, too, but this is a co-production of Italy and Spain. Currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.1. We have a maniac killer in a red cape and hood is killing off American tourists on a tour bus by gouging out their eyeballs. So featured review here would be over on episode 313. I believe this is for Italian Horror Month. So the premise here, Lindsay's 75 Giallo Eyeball is a wild ride. It features a killer in a red poncho, stalking American tourists on a bus, systematically gouging out their eyes, a perfect setup for Italian horror fans. The hits and the sweet spot is for this genre is it's a genuine, engaging puzzle that avoids the too obvious trap, and thankfully it doesn't cheat the viewer with a nonsensical or cheap reveal. The suspect pool is constructed to keep you guessing until the final act, and this one also is a breath of fresh air in the subgenre that the police aren't incompetent. Inspector Tudela is a professional on this case, and the investigative tension is surprisingly sharp. It even invokes hints of like Seven, much later than this one. Lindsay knows how to frame a scene. The cinematography, specifically the killer's point of view shots, is excellent, and it's all underscored by a fantastic soundtrack that captures the era perfectly. Then for performances, Brochard and Richardson lead a solid ensemble cast. They do a great job grounding the film, and the supporting players effectively balance the line between potential victims and viable suspects. So with themes touching on like sexual deviance and the perils of the outsider, Eyeball is a satisfying, well-executed entry. It's a definite recommendation for anybody who loves a good giallo, and I give this one an 8 out of 10. And then coming in at number 67 here, Savage Land from 2015. Written and directed amongst Phil Gundry, Simon Herbert, and David Whalen. Features Heather Moore, Lars Nielsen, and J.C. Carlos. This is a B-horror, found-footage, zombie horror, mystery thriller film. This is from the United States, and it's currently set on a 6.0 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.3. Synopsis: when a small town near the Arizona-Mexico border is wiped out overnight, suspicion falls on a lone survivor, but a roll of photos the survivor took that night tell a much different story. So this is a gripping mockumentary about a small border town in Arizona that is wiped out overnight, leaving the survivor of Francisco Salazar, who is immediately cast as the villain due to being an illegal immigrant. This would actually make a whole lot of sense being watched today, too. It is surprisingly relevant, especially tackling themes of deep-seated prejudice, and the dangers of people who are too closed-minded to accept evidence that contradicts their existing beliefs. And we have some subdued realism here. This successfully avoids its big acting performances by the cast being wonderfully subdued, making the whole thing feel like a legitimate documentary crew investigating a tragedy. Then we have the Alex Jones effects here. Edward L. Green stands out as a local radio personality who feels like a small-town Alex Jones as he plays the role where it made me angry, which is a sign of a great performance. Cinematography here is a masterclass in restraint. By choosing not too cheap reenactments and instead relying on the grainy out-of-focus photographs from the night of the event, the film maintains a creepy, grounded sense of realism. So for me, this is a top-tier found-footage horror film that deserves to be seen by more people, and I give this one a solid 8 out of 10 as well. So then coming at number 66 here, Deathgasm from 2015. Written and directed by Jason Lee Howden. Stars Milo Cawthorne, James Blake, and Kimberly Crossman. This is a dark comedy, body, folk, teen, splatter horror, teen comedy music film from New Zealand. Currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.2. Synopsis: 2 teenage boys unwittingly summon an ancient evil entity known as the Blind One by delving into black magic while trying to escape their mundane lives. So here, I did a mini review on episode 108, and then this is also selected for T-Put's Movie Club Challenge. So for this one, we have a perfect blend of mundane teen struggles and supernatural chaos. Brody, an outcast metalhead, and his friend Zach accidentally summon an ancient entity called the Blind One while jamming to forbidden sheet music. It's high-octane fun from the start. There's definitely some Evil Dead DNA. The film wears its influences on its sleeve. If you're a fan of the Evil Dead, specifically the blend of gore, demon possession, and chainsaw-wielding comedy, this will hit a spot for you. It manages to balance the horror and humor effectively. We got some practical effects for the win. The gore is a total highlight. The practical effects are creative, memorable, and frankly hilarious, including a standout dildo fight against demons. While the CGI is weak, the film is smart enough to not over-rely on it. And there's heart behind the noise. It's more than just a gore fest. This actually digs into relatable themes like school bullying, teenage isolation, plus the character of Medina is a great subversion of the typical gorgeous girl trope. She's generally interested in Brody and stands up to her bully boyfriend. While you're metalhead or not, the score is perfect. It's seamlessly integrated into action and really drives the energy during the film's most chaotic moments. I have some critiques. It isn't flawless. The comedy is either hit or miss. The cult subplot feels underdeveloped, and it perhaps lacks that same wow factor upon a second viewing. Still, a first-time watch, it was an absolute blast. Solid acting all around, though, especially from Cawthorne as the lead and Blake as the infuriatingly good antagonist. Fun, fast-paced horror comedy that earns a strong 7 out of 10 for me as well. Then number 65, Borderline from 2025. Written and directed by Jimmy Warden. Stars Samara Weaving, Ray Nicholson, and Eric Dane. This is a dark comedy, psychological horror, and thriller. This is from the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb. Letterboxd has it at 2.7. Synopsis is a bodyguard protects a pop superstar and her athlete boyfriend from a determined stalker in 1990s Los Angeles. So I like the setting here of being when it is. This is a horror comedy that balances celebrity obsession with satire. While it leans more towards comedy, it successfully maintains a grounded, unsettling narrative without feeling exploitative. I think the performance here by Weaving excels as the aloof celebrity. Nicholson gives a standout performance that channels his father's iconic smile, delivering a psychologically complex and effectively wild portrayal as the film's antagonist. This also effectively navigates the difficult balance of horror and comedy, leaning into satire to poke fun at the celebrity culture while utilizing strong practical effects and period-accurate production design to create this world. And then the ensemble cast here, including like Dane as a protective bodyguard and Jimmy Fails as a surprisingly layered professional athlete, adds a crucial depth, helping to humanize the stakes of the story. So for me, this one is a well-made, entertaining experience that manages to be both humorous and unsettling, ultimately earning a 8 out of 10 for being unique. Then coming at number 64, this one is The Nesting. Goes by the original title of Pew. This is from 2025. It was written and directed by Chloe Sigmars. This is starring Rosemarie Perrault, Simon Landry Desi, and Saladin Dellers. This is a drama horror thriller film that's a co-production of Canada and Switzerland. This is currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.7, Letterboxd 3.4. The synopsis is, a young mother struggling with postpartum depression and insomnia becomes increasingly haunted by the traumatic death of her sister, spiraling deeper into psychological turmoil as she tries to care for her newborn. So I did a mini review here on episode 342. I got to see this as a screener. This is a raw, poignant character study directed by Sick Mars. as it follows Penelope, portrayed by Perrault, a young mother battling postpartum depression and insomnia while being haunted by the loss of her sister, like I said. So this leans into psychological horror, effectively tapping into feelings of isolation, unresolved grief, and the parasitic anxiety of motherhood. It's stylistically reminiscent of The Yellow Wallpaper and Rosemary's Baby. I thought Perrault delivers an excellent performance, perfectly capturing the fear and body dysmorphia of the character. I'd also say Simon Landry Desi as the boyfriend Gaspard also impresses as he effectively portraying a partner who evolves significantly throughout the story. And for me, this one shines with technical execution. The director uses claustrophobic framing to make the domestic space feel suffocating, and the haunting score builds consistent tension. The subtlety of using like a mouse infestation in the house adds a layer of grime that underscores the domestic decay. So this one is a powerful, memorable watch that hits hard if you've ever experienced the intense stress of early parenthood. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 for its deep thematic exploration and sharp filmmaking. And then number 63, Frankenstein from 2025. Written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, based from the original story by Mary Shelley. Stars Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, and Christoph Waltz. This is a dark fantasy, body monster, psychological horror, steampunk, tragedy, drama, and sci-fi. So the co-productions here are Mexico, United States, and Canada. We have this one sitting on IMDb as a 7.4, Letterboxd 3.8, and the synopsis is Dr. Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant but egotistical scientist, brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both creator and his tragic creation. So Frankenstein here being portrayed by Isaac. And I thought that Del Toro effectively breathes new life into the familiar tale by splitting the film into two distinct chapters. The first is focusing on Victor as his drive to conquer death, the second on the creature's own tragic journey. So Isaac delivers a compelling performance as that arrogant, obsessive scientist. I thought Elordi utilized his physical presence to perfectly capture the creature's sorrow and evolving rage. And this also benefits from nuanced changes, particularly in reimagining Elizabeth, who is portrayed by Mia Goth, as a fellow scientist in her own agency, introduction of Waltz's character of Harlander, who is a manipulative benefactor. Del Toro maintains his reputation for stunning gothic aesthetic, seamlessly blending steampunk elements into a modern creature design that feels more authentic to Shelley's original novel than past cinematic versions. While this one is a thematic triumph and successful character study, the primary criticism for me is excessive runtime, which makes the pacing a challenge alongside some minor overuse of CGI. I do think that this is an 8 out of 10. It's ambitious, respectful readaptation that serves as a visually rich and emotionally complex addition to the creature canon. And that would be like the Frankenstein creature canon. Number 62 then, Primate, 2025, written and co-written and directed by Johannes Roberts, and then the co-writer here is going to be Ernest Raniera. This is starring Johnny Sequoia, Jess Alexander, and Troy Kotsur. This is a B-horror, splatter, teen, and eco-horror. This is from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and Letterboxd 2.6. Synopsis being, Lucy reunites with her family, including a pet chimp Ben. Ben contracts rabies during a pool party and turns aggressive as Lucy and her friends try to find a way to survive. So Lucy is actually portrayed by Sequoia, and then we have the actual primate is being portrayed by Miguel Torres Umba, I believe in like motion capture suit. So this one was a featured review on episode 324. I did another mini review on this one. Not really sure which would be episode 337. Not sure how I missed that originally, but I did update it. So here we go. But think Cujo, but transplanted from the Midwest to a stunning, isolated Hawaiian cliffside. The shift in scenery doesn't dull the tension, it intensifies it. So this executes a simple, high-stakes premise. A group is trapped in a swimming pool, forced into a cat-and-mouse game with a rabid, athletic chimpanzee. Emotional hook. Unlike many creature features, this one succeeds by treating the chimp Ben as a tragic family member rather than a monster, just which raises the stakes when things go wrong. Some dark comedy elements here. This leans into the Congo-esque roots by giving the chimp a tablet to communicate via sign language, which serves as a great dark cinematic counterpoint to the violence. Now, the direction is effective, it's efficient, stylish, featuring brutal practical effects that hide the film's budget constraints. While soundtrack leans heavily into Halloween and Phantasm, it ultimately fits the needs perfectly for what was needed there, obviously. So while the undercast character interactions aren't perfect, the overall execution here makes it a standout claustrophobic thrill ride, and I thought Primate's a fun movie that I gave an 8 out of 10 to. And then I'm going to be very quick here for number 61, which is Undertone. Go back to the mini reviews to hear what I thought about this one since I just covered that one here. And coming in at number 60, Companion from 2025, written and directed by Drew Hancock. This stars Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, and Lucas Gage. So this has the genres here of artificial intelligence, dark comedy, psychological thriller, sci-fi, and horror from the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.9, nice, and Letterboxd is a 3.4. The synopsis is a billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to a lakeside estate. So this one here, and Iris is actually portrayed by Thatcher, and I did a feature review on episode 275 and then a mini review on episode 289. So it starts with a similar familiar setup here, a group of friends heading to a remote lakeside estate, but the integration of high-tech elements and the self-driving car motif makes the environment feel more modern and unsettling, avoiding the usual rustic cabin tropes. So Thatcher is the anchor of this film. She handles a very difficult role with precision. Quaid deserves a shout out for his character arc. He perfectly pivots from charming, awkward boyfriend to something more arrogant and entitled. So this film also tackles heavy themes with toxic masculinity, bullying, misogyny. While the exploration is a bit ham-fisted and arguably on the nose, the social commentary is well written, enough to spark a legitimate debate. And then for filmmaking, this successfully captures the feeling of true isolation. The cinematography and framing of the dense forest sets the mood, and the effects work. Blending CGI with solid practical effects for the blood and gore, they're all impressive. So for me, this is a rewarding second watch. It's a compelling look at the dangers of our reliance on technology, how easily things can spiral out of control, and my rating here for Companion, I give an 8 out of 10. Then coming at number 59, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge from 1985, directed by Jack Shoulder. This was written by David Chaskin. This is from characters by Wes Craven. Now this is starring Robert Englund, Mark Patton, and Kim Myers. So this is a body, slasher, splatter, supernatural teen horror film from the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb. Letterboxd has it as a 2.8. Synopsis is a teenage boy dreams are haunted by a deceased child murderer, Freddy Krueger, who is out to possess him to continue his reign of terror in the real world. So Freddy, once again, was being reprised by Robert Englund, but almost not. So after watching the documentary Scream Queen, revisiting this film adds a layer of sadness regarding the impact that it had on actor Patton's life and career. So we have a darker Freddy here. This iteration features a scarier, more ominous version, notably before the character became defined by the campy comedy of later sequels. So this has some rich film stuff with metaphors for repression and same-gender attraction, with Freddy serving as a dark side that the protagonist Jesse is trying to fight, and Jesse is, of course, being portrayed by Patton. And then there's a misstep here. I think this is well made. It feels a little bit like a lore outlier. It diverges too drastically from the original film's established rules, though it works effectively if viewed as a standalone piece. So the practical effects are strong. The cinematography does a great job of blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. Performances by Englund, Patton, Myers, and Robert Russler carry the story well. So for me, this is an 8 out of 10. It's a solid, well-crafted entry that's worth a watch, especially if you're looking for a darker, more psychological take on the franchise. And that's what I come in for A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. And then number 58 is going to be We Are Still Here from 2015. Written and directed by Ted Geohagen. So this is starring Andrew Sensenig, Barbara Crampton, and Larry Fessenden. This is a folk, splatter, supernatural horror mystery film from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.7 on IMDb. Letterboxd has it as a 2.9. So synopsis. The cold, wintry fields of New England. A lonely house that is old wakes up every 30 years and demands a sacrifice. So Jake and I covered this over on SideQuest. This was episode number 6. So this is a tight, no-nonsense haunted house film that follows a grieving couple of Paul, portrayed by Sensenig, and Anne, portrayed by Crampton, moving into a rural New England home after the tragic death of their son. So the emotional anchor here is its greatest strength, and that's the performances. Sensenig and Crampton feel like they're genuinely lived-in grieving couple. They're dynamic and clinging to the past while Paul is trying to hold things together, grounds of supernatural chaos and real human emotion. We have a Lovecraftian pivot here, where this starts out as a classic ghost story. The film isn't afraid to take a sharp, dark turn. The climax leans into a Lovecraftian vibe that adds serious weight to the lore. For those who like horror to evolve, this shift is a total win. And then we have some practical excellence here with the effects that are fantastic. The entities with burnt white eyes and often are just silently watching in the background are generally unsettling. Plus, the practical gore is impressive and catches me off guard, or it catches anybody off guard, actually, in the best ways possible. And then there's some credits details here, and a huge shout out to the end credits, actually. Seeing the history of the house play out through old newspaper headlines was a brilliant touch that fleshed out that every 30-year cycle. It legitimately bumped the score up a full point. I do think this would be better served if it came a little bit earlier, so we can kind of get some of that while we're watching things. So it's not perfect. There's a logic gap here regarding the sun spirit. Why would he haunt a house he's never been to? Additionally, the neighbor of Dave drifts a bit too far into the mustache twirly villainy region territory, which is slightly at odds with the grounded tone of the rest of the film. So despite some minor quibbles, this one is a better modern haunted house entries that I've seen. It's effective, atmospheric, and respects the audience's time here. And I give my rating here for We Are Still Here. I give this one an 8 out of 10. And then number 57 is going to be Noriko's Dinner Table, or the original title of Noriko no Shakutaku. This is from 2005, written and directed by Sion Sono. This stars Kazu Fukishi, Tasugumi, and then Yoriko Tashataka. So it's a psychological drama horror film from Japan, and it's currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.0, Letterboxd 3.8. A teenager runs away from her family to Tokyo, where she gets involved with a strange group of people. So I did a mini review of this on episode 17. So this is actually a kind of weird prequel, side sequel to Suicide Club, diving into the dark realities of isolation in the internet age. And so, the narrative structure here, it's broken into 5 chapters, offering a multi-perspective look at the events through the eyes of a runaway teen of Noruko and her sister Yuka, and the family service provider of Kumiko, and their father Tetsuzo. So this is less a traditional horror film and more like a heavy social commentary on loneliness and its performative identity, where characters hire strangers to simulate familial connections to fill emotional voids. I think the acting is a major strength here, particularly the transformation of main characters, supported by an unnerving classical sounding soundtrack that masterfully builds an anxious, haunting tone. So for me, the pacing's a bit of an issue, as this runs 159 minutes. It's a primary drawback. It feels like a literal adaptation that served to trim the source material, resulting in a repetitive flow that disrupts the narrative momentum. So despite the length, it remains a compelling recommendation, I would say, for fans of psychological dramas. It earns an 8 out of 10 for its thematic ambition and strong acting, though it exclusively subtitled experience, so just keep that in mind since it is from Japan. And then coming at number 56, I have Crimson Peak from 2015, directed by Guillermo del Toro, who co-wrote this with Matthew Robbins. Stars Mia Wasikowska, Jessica Chastain, and Tom Hiddleston. This is a dark romance, supernatural horror, suspense, mystery, and drama. This is a co-production of Mexico and the United States, currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb and Letterboxd a 3.5. And the synopsis is, in the aftermath of a family tragedy, an inspiring author is torn between love of her childhood friend and temptation of a mysterious outsider. Trying to escape the ghosts of her past, she is swept away to a house that breathes, bleeds, and remembers. So for me, I did a mini review on episode 108. So this one has a good rewatch factor for me. I first had watched this, I was a little bit lukewarm on my first watch. That second one, I actually saw it in 35mm. I'm pretty sure I went to the Gateway Film Center to catch this. That unlocked this for me. And it actually moved up its rating. I'll get to that in a second. But this requires you to drop your initial expectations, appreciate what it is, a gothic romance, not your standard horror flick that we would kind of see like a haunted house stuff today. So for me, the visual mastery and atmosphere highlight the production design. The visual contrast between the dreary house, the vivid red clay is stunning. This strikes a great balance between practical and CGI, creating an immersive, living atmosphere that feels entirely authentic. The house as a protagonist is kind of an interesting thing here because we have Ardenelle Hall. It is the true heart of the movie. That's Crimson Peak. It's a character unto itself. It breathes, bleeds, and decays, channeling strong like the Fall of the House of Usher vibes. The ghosts aren't the focal point. They're the narrative tools helping the protagonist piece together the truth. So, we have some cast dynamics here. We have Wasikowska is the anchor. Her portrayal of this innocent turned truth seeker is incredible and underrated and grounded. Chastain and Hiddleston, I think Chastain's performance is wonderfully subdued, allowing the tension to simmer, where Hiddleston handles the inherent awkwardness of the baronet role well. We have Doug Jones, a must-mention for his incredible physical acting as the ghosts. And the slow burn defense here is the pacing. Yeah, it meanders a bit, but that's a feature, not a bug. It mirrors the pacing of classic Gothic novels perfectly, supported by a score that leans beautifully into piano-led, atmospheric Gothic roots. So ultimately, this is a recommend. If you are a fan of Del Toro's specific aesthetic or enjoy a slow burn Gothic romance, this is a must-watch. And my rating for Crimson Peak, I come in with an 8 out of 10. And then number 50, I have Baskin from 2015, directed by Can Evernall. This was written between Evernall, Golkan, Aaron Akay, Irsin Sada Goglu, and Kem Ozuduru. This stars Mehmet Serahaglu, Gorkem Kazal, and Ergun Kuyusu. So this is a body, folk, monster, psychological, supernatural horror film, also a thriller, from Turkey. It is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.0. And the synopsis: a squad of unsuspecting cops go through a trapdoor to hell where they stumble upon a black mass in an abandoned building. So this one I did a mini review on episode 108, and then I also went over to the Nightclub podcast for the first time to talk about this one. So for the hook here, Baskin is a Turkish horror revelation that serves as a masterclass in building a nightmarish, surreal atmosphere. It follows a squad of unsuspecting cops who stumble into a literal trapdoor to hell, a black mass held in an abandoned Ottoman-era police station. So the practical effects are top tier and brutal, with a climax that is genuinely cringeworthy. When you pair that with visuals like a pounding metal soundtrack, the film successfully ramps up the tension and fear until the very end. So standouts here, I would say Sarah Haglu is absolutely chilling as the father, providing a haunting, memorable presence. Surprisingly, the film does a fantastic job of fleshing out the individual personalities of the police squad, which can get lost in the international genre films. So for me, it isn't without its issues. The pacing hits a bit of a slump in the middle and then leans so far into ambiguity that I found myself wanting a little bit more concrete answers about the cult and the bizarre frog motifs. So this one, 8 out of 10 experience. If you're a fan of cult horror and don't mind subtitles, this is an essential viewing. It's flawed, but overall nightmare vibe makes a journey worth taking. And so I would say, yeah, check out Baskin. And then number 54, I have The Skeleton Key from 2005, directed by Ian Softly. This was written by Aaron Kruger. This stars Kate Hudson, Peter Sarsgaard, and Joy Bryant. This is a folk, psychological, supernatural witch horror, drama, mystery, and thriller. So the country of origin. This is United States and Germany co-production. IMDb has a 6.5, Letterboxd 3.2. So the synopsis: a hospice nurse working at a spooky New Orleans plantation home finds herself entangled in a mystery involving the house's dark past. So I did a mini review for this one on episode 45. I actually called this one in theaters when it originally came out. And this one holds up. It's been 15 years since I first saw this, and I'm happy to report that it still works. While I remember the big reveal, the details remain fresh, making it a blast to revisit, especially getting to the point things out in real time with Jamie. So the setting is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. The isolation of this Louisiana swamp is genuinely creepy. The film does a great job with the outsider dynamic, emphasizing that Carolyn, who is Kate Hudson, is a fish out of water from New Jersey, which adds a layer of tension to her arrival. I really appreciated how this film handles hoodoo and the voodoo ideas. It's not just magic, it's predicated on belief. Watching Carolyn reluctantly dabble in spells for her patient, Ben, is a subtle, effective way of showing a believer against her own will, but then that growing. Hudson drives the investigation with a compelling performance, and Gina Rowlands is fantastic as the standoffish Violet. Sarsgaard brings a great, untrustworthy energy to the role of Luke, and John Hurt does an incredible job with his physicality, conveying so much despite having very few lines. So subtle horror here. I love how they chose a restrained approach to the effects. The use of mirrors for shadows and the creepy, scratchy quality of the old vinyl records featuring Papa Justifies chants is perfect. It's an eerie, unsettling experience that doesn't need to rely on over-the-top visuals to work. So this is a solid, engaging story that hooks you from the start, whether you're a die-hard horror fan or just looking for a good mystery. This one earns an 8 out of 10 from me, and I would recommend The Skeleton Key. And then coming in at number 53, Land of the Dead from 2005, written and directed by George A. Romero, starring John Leguizamo, Asia Argento, and Simon Baker. This is a dark comedy, zombie horror, thriller, and sci-fi film. This is a co-production of France, Canada, and the United States. This is currently set on a 6.2 on IMDb, Letterboxd 2.9. Synopsis: the living dead have taken over the world, and the last humans live in a walled city to protect themselves as they come to grips with the situation. So originally saw this one in theaters when it came out. I've seen it a handful of times throughout the years. Did a mini review on episode 65. So for me, the first of the Dead films that I got to see in the theater, that was my senior year of high school, making it a nostalgic family viewing experience because I know my dad, I think my mom and sister were all there. The film features overt, impactful subtext regarding capitalism and class warfare, drawing parallels between the ruling class in Fiddler's Green and the reality of the slums below. So this pushes the series mythology forward by introducing Big Daddy, a zombie who demonstrates the ability to think, communicate, and organize a revolution. So performances here, actually, though. We have John Leguizamo as Cholo and Dennis Hopper as Kaufman. They deliver some strong work. Baker is fine as our lead. He's a little bit too stoic and overshadowed by some of his co-stars. And I think the practical effects and zombie makeup, they're highly effective. This heavy reliance on dated CGI is a drawback that doesn't necessarily hold up well. While this is considered by me the weakest of Romero's top 4 Dead films, it's still a good movie. And I would recommend it to fans of the genre. And I give Land of the Dead an 8 out of 10. And then the penultimate film on this section of the list, 52, is going to be Him from 2025. Directed by Justin Tipping. This stars Zach Akers, Skip Bronke, and Justin Tipping. And it is starring Tyreek Withers, Marlon Wayans, and Julia Fox. This is a body, folk, psychological, supernatural horror. And you could also go football, sport, and thriller. This is from the United States. Currently set on a 5.0. Letterboxd is a 2.5. Synopsis. A young athlete descends into a world of terror when he's invited to train with a legendary champion whose charisma curdles into something darker. So this has a high concept hook for me here, is that it's a fascinating experiment. Jordan Peele producing a horror flick set in the world of professional football. It's not a slasher. It's an intriguing character study that uses the glory at all cost mentality of sports to fuel its horror elements. And then we have a good transition here, or transformation, I should say, where Wayans as Isaiah White, he's legitimately terrifying, channeling like a Patrick Bateman-esque energy. He portrays a legendary quarterback whose obsession with being great and staying on top turns into borderline psychotic cult-like grip on the successors. Beyond the scares here, the film offers a sharp social commentary on the gladiatorial nature of the NFL. It treats the draft like a modern-day slave auction and explores the Faustian bargains young players make where they sign in a contract feels more like you're selling your soul to a devilish organization. And the filmmaking is top tier. The director creates a surreal atmosphere, but the real standout is the cinematography. I do really like these X-ray visual effects showing how internal injuries and physical damage provides like a chilling, visceral look at the toll that sports take on the human body. While the narrative here can be a bit manic and occasionally falls into plot holes, the film succeeds on its ambition, I think at least. It's a bold, unsettling blend of genres that, despite its rougher edges, comes in at 8 out of 10. It's definitely thought-provoking entry into the genre from 2025. And then the last film here on this section, VHS Halloween from 2025. The directors here, Brian M. Ferguson, Casper Kelly, R.H. Norman, Alex Ross Perry, Michelin Pitt, Paco Plaza, and Anna Zlokovic. And then the writers here, Ferguson, Zlokovic, Alberto Mariani, Plaza, Kelly, Perry, Pitt, and Norman. Now, this stars David Hayden, Anna McKelvey, and Adam James Johnson. This is a dark comedy, body found footage, splatter, supernatural horror film from the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.7, Letterboxd 2.9. A collection of Halloween-themed videotapes unleashes a series of twisted, blood-soaked tales, turning Trick or Treat into a survival or struggle for survival. So I did a featured review for this one from Nightmares Film Festival on episode 312. And then, actually I did not. I saw this at Nightmares Film Festival, and then I decided to do this as a following week since it was a Halloween film. And I did a mini review on episode 322. So this is the latest installment for these strong entries here for this franchise, delivering a cohesive Halloween-themed cinematic experience that successfully blends various styles of horror, from supernatural, folk, dread to whimsical mean-spiritedness. So just kind of running through these real quick here. The wraparound is Diet Phantasma. It is a hilarious, campy satire on corporate greed and hazardous products, featuring a diet soda made with ghost extract that sets an intriguing, if occasionally repetitive tone. Coochie Coochie Coo. A solid opening that hits on themes of motherhood and leaving childhood behind. It leans into gross out practical effects and effective folk horror, making it a great tone setter. And then Supra Sick Infra, an impressive international segment that twists the classic seance trope using a telephone, delivering a darker cosmic dread experience that feels fresh despite echoes of other genre films. Fun Size is a standout favorite for the collection. This segment brilliantly mixes surreal body horror with the theme of gluttony, utilizing great cinematography to frame a nightmare factory that is as mean-spirited as it is entertaining. Kinprint, the darkest of the group, focusing on suburban paranoia and stranger danger. While it tackles sensitive subjects, the technical execution and clever editing make it effective, albeit grim exploration of predator and plain sight tropes. Home Haunt, a nostalgic, lethal take on the classic home family bonding over Halloween haunts trope. It features a cursed object narrative that ramps up the stakes, ending the anthology on a high note. So for me, I give this an 8 out of 10. This succeeds, thanks to strong acting and the balanced mix of practical and digital effects, making it a highly recommend for people who are fans of the franchise and general horror enthusiasts, in my opinion. So that's all I have here then for this section. This is going to wrap up through 51. Let me go ahead and rest my voice one more time as I get you back here for 50 to 26 as I keep working through this list.
You know what that sound means? It's another episode of Game for a Movie, where we ask, are you game for a movie?
Tell me, Andre. There's no special features on that goddamn DVD, alright?
Wow.
For Hansel and Gretel?
Hansel and
You
Gretel.
have a DVD
You watch it?
Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel.
She basically has sex with it, somehow.
No,
Foreplay.
yeah, yes.
She's chair foreplay.
I mean, they knocked it out of the park, which is why it's my number 3. So.
Oh!
I mean, I wouldn't be in it because this movie doesn't have women. But, you know, it's
You-
fine.
It has
You're right.
It has one.
You would have 3 lines of dialogue.
But how much?
3.
Oh, okay. So I'm actually gonna get, I earn my 4 sentences of dialogue rather than, here, have a paycheck. You just stood there on the screen. You're a sexy lamp.
Shape or form. Anyway, we're not.
Dark Phoenix 2.
No.
No.
Because they really hate each other, so we get to enjoy some wonderful comedic scenes of them hating each other so much that they get into physical altercations that include her biting ex-detective Phillips's dick.
Okay.
But we don't in a hot tub.
I know all of those words were English, but the way you constructed them, I'm lost.
I'm not following the arrangement of them very well.
For those who haven't rated us or liked or given us a review, don't say that we haven't given you anything of value after listening to this podcast. You now know the difference between an R-rated dick and an NC-17 X-rated dick. You're welcome.
Thank you guys for listening to Game for a Movie, where we ask, are you game for a movie? We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
And welcome back. Coming in at number 50, Planet of the Vampires. Goes by the original title of Terror nello Spazio. This is from 1965, directed by Mario Bava. It was written between Ebe Melchor, Alberto Belcoacqua, Callisto Kozlish, Bava himself, Antonio Roman, and Rafael J. Salvia. So the original writer here, Renito Pestrinero. This is starring Barry Sullivan, Norma Bengal, and Angel Arnada. So this is a monster and vampire horror, space sci-fi action adventure. So this is a co-production of Italy and Spain. This is currently set on a 6.2 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.2. This is a synopsis. After landing on a mysterious planet, a team of astronauts begin to turn on each other, swayed by the uncertain influence of the planet and its strange inhabitants. So I did a featured review on episode 315. I'm pretty sure this is for Italian Horror Month. So this is a Bava blind spot. Planet of the Vampires is a stylish, must-see Italian sci-fi horror from the master himself, proving that despite a misleading title, the film is highly influential entry into the genre. So this one really succeeds on its tangible, eerie atmosphere, utilizing impressive miniature work for the spaceships and fog-drenched unknown landscapes that builds genuine tension. So the aesthetics here, the production design, from the futuristic astronaut suits to the instrument naming, creates a convincing, grounded aesthetic that complements the model work perfectly. And we got some existential horror here. This is beyond the creature feature setup. This leans into sophisticated themes of cosmic dread, the loss of body autonomy, and deep-seated paranoia regarding whom to trust among the stranded crew. Now, the final reveal here is genuinely shocking, holding its own against heavy hitters. I would say up there with Planet of the Apes, the OG one. I think Sullivan turns in a solid performance as the captain, successfully balancing the role of investigator with genuine concern for the crew, while the ensemble cast handles the subtle, creepy shift from normal to influence with nuance. So for me, I give this an 8 out of 10. Recommend it. A compelling, influential piece of filmmaking that remains a treat for modern viewers interested in the craft of classic Italian genre cinema. And we're going to stick with that country and go to 49, and that's going to be Phenomena from 1985. This is directed by Dario Argento, who co-wrote this with Franco Ferrini. This is starring Jennifer Connelly, Donald Pleasance, and Daria Nicolodi. This is serial killer, slasher, teen horror, whodunit, crime, and mystery. From Italy, like I was saying, this is currently sitting on a 6.7 on IMDb and Letterboxd 3.6. Our synopsis: a young girl with an amazing ability to communicate with insects is transferred to an exclusive Swiss boarding school, where her unusual capability might help to solve a string of murders. So I did a mini review on this one on 197. I know I've actually seen this one in the theater. I've watched it once before that, so I've seen it twice. And Dario here delivers on a unique supernatural giallo where a young girl of Jennifer, who is portrayed by Jennifer Connelly, with the ability to communicate with insects, teams up with a wheelchair-bound entomologist, who is Pleasance, to stop a killer at a Swiss boarding school. And for me, this holds up even better after the second time around. The pacing and character development is better than I thought. I had some gripes with it the first time. It feels seamless now. And the identity of the killer is earned rather than a cheat, with subtle clues hidden throughout that make this feel incredibly satisfying to unravel. We have some atmospheric flourishes here. Like, there's like this stuff with wind. It acts like a reoccurring motif that feels like it's driving the characters toward madness, while the Swiss Transylvania setting adds a surreal, mysterious layer to the geography. Seeing a young Jennifer Connelly is an early role as a highlight. Donald brings a refreshing, subdued energy to his performance. Daria is excellent as well, though you'll likely wish she had more screen time like I did. The practical effects are excellent, from the distinctive spear-like murder weapon to the gruesome maggot pull. Even the pre-CGI computer effects have a certain nostalgic charm to them. It's an eclectic, heavy-hitting soundtrack as well, featuring Goblin, Iron Maiden, Motorhead, and others, so there's something there to look forward to. Might not be Dario's absolute peak musical effort for what he's kind of compiled into a movie, but it's still a fantastic playlist. So for me, I give this an 8 out of 10. It's one that is flirting with my top 5 of Argento's filmography. I think it's probably just outside of there, but it's definitely close. Then number 48, The Ugly Stepsister, goes by the original title of Den Stegi Stensoturen. This is from 2025, written and directed by Emily Blichfeld. And I would also say there's some homages here to the fairy tale that it's based off of. So this, I believe, is Cinderella. And then this is starring Leah Myron, Andal Torp, and Thea Sophia Lochnius. So this is a dark comedy, body horror, satire, comedy, and drama. Co-productions here of Norway, Poland, Denmark, Romania, and Sweden. So IMDb, this rating is a 7.0, Letterboxd 3.6. Synopsis is Elvira, who is portrayed by Myron, is battling against her gorgeous stepsister in a realm where beauty reigns supreme. She resorts to extreme measures to captivate the prince amidst a ruthless competition for physical perfection. So I did a feature review on episode 289, did a mini review on 303. Now, this one is a refreshing horror take on Cinderella fairy tale, where the real hook is the perspective. We're seeing the story through the eyes of the wicked stepsister, Elvira. So this is a morality play, though. It's fascinating how it starts out where everybody is relatively likable. The tragedy is watching how the environment and the pursuit of status slowly corrode the characters, pushing them towards villainy. And this one uses body horror perfectly. There's some extreme surgery to tapeworms to explore disordered eating and the toxic pursuit of physical perfection. The practical effects are effective and intentionally cringe-inducing in the best ways possible. I also think Myron is excellent Elvira, anchoring the film with a performance that makes her journey from naive dreamer to callous schemer well earned. And then I think Blichfield uses clever framing and cinematography to mirror the character's internal self-consciousness, making this feel grounded despite its fairy tale roots. If there is a gripe, it's the pacing. This runs just a little bit too long. Trimming about 10 minutes would have made it a tighter experience and work better. But for me, thought-provoking, genre-bending horror film that earns a solid 8 out of 10 as well. And then coming into number 47, Norai the Curse from 2005. Directed by Koji Shirayashi, who also co-wrote this with Naoyuki Yokota. This is starring Jin Murkai, Ryo Kano, and Tamanono Kuga. And this is a folk and found footage horror psychological thriller mystery. This is from Japan, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.8, Letterboxd 3.6. Synopsis is a documentary filmmaker explores seemingly unrelated paranormal incidents connected by the legend of the ancient demon called Kagutaba. So if you'd like to hear a featured review, or not a feature review, if you'd like to go hear a review, it's going to be T-Put's Movie Club Challenge. I covered this over there. This was a long time white whale for me. Frequently, it would come up on horror podcasts. I know, like, Podcasts Under the Stairs did on their Summer Challenge series. Difficult to track down before it landed on Shudder. So it was a 2005 Japanese found footage film, and it's presented like a documentary where we have a filmmaker of Masafumi Kobayashi who vanished from investigating a string of paranormal events linked to the demon of Kagutaba. What makes it stand out is how the story unfolds with massive, intricate puzzle. The film pulls from various television shows and interviews that connects events that don't seem related, creating a slow burn sense of foreboding and dread. A huge asset is the casting as well. Many actors are credited as self, using their own names, which really grounds this and sells the documentary format. The lead of Murkai is perfectly cast as this inquisitive, relentless investigator. While the dread is palpable, the film isn't perfect. There are a few moments where the found footage logic feels strained, like when characters are filming moments that realistically wouldn't be. CGI near the end is a bit dated, though not enough to ruin this experience. So despite a nearly 2-hour runtime, the atmosphere of dread kept me engaged throughout. resulting in an unsettling watch that earns an 8 out of 10. I've only seen this once. I definitely need to revisit this one at some point here soon. And then coming at number 46, Hostel from 2005. Written and directed by Eli Roth. Stars Jay Hernandez, Derek Richardson, and Ethor Gunjansson. So it's a body slasher splatter horror from the United States and Czech Republic. Currently set on a 5.9 on IMDb, Letterboxd 2.7. Synopsis is 3 backpackers head to a Slovak city that promises to meet their hedonistic expectations with no idea of the hell that awaits them. So I did a mini review on episode 48 for this one. I saw this one in theaters when it first came out, and I've seen it a few different times throughout the years, but yeah. So this captures a specific era. Like I said, watched it right after high school graduation, I'm assuming. It served as a entry point for Roth's filmography for me. Might not be necessarily true. I definitely would have seen Cabin Fever around the same time, but it remains a compelling watch even when viewed through a critical lens today. So we have this weird elite hunting reality where the premise feels grand. The idea about wealth and corruption could facilitate a concept is generally terrifying. Roth reportedly considered a documentary on the subject first, but the topic proved too dangerous to pursue in reality. I don't know how much of that is just kind of staging something to make it scarier, but kind of interesting here, some dynamics and commentary. The protagonists aren't necessarily likable by today's standards. Their dialogue includes language that is dated and offensive now, yet they accurately mirror the entitled hedonistic college-age traveler. I'm pretty sure I fell into some of this too. Beneath the gore, there's a distinct social commentary on classism and the endless pursuit of the forbidden fruit. I do think the acting holds up. Richardson offers a standout performance, and Hernandez, truly shining as his character, pivots later in the story. An effective visual touch provides the female characters as their true natures are revealed. The removal of makeup makes them look noticeably worse, subverting their initial attractive introduction. We also have some industry masters here with their practical craft of Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger on board. The practical effects are very successful and realistic, despite one minor issue with an eyeball effect, but I'm not going to hold that against it. Ultimately, this is a solid 8 out of 10. It provides more depth than standard slasher and less graphic than memory might suggest, making it a surprisingly layered experience. So then, for number 45 here, Wolf Creek from 2005. Written and directed by Greg McLean. Stars Nathan Williams, Cassandra McGrath, and Kesty Morassi, as well as John Jarrett. So it's a psychological thriller slasher splatter film horror from Australia. Currently set on a 6.2 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.0. Synopsis is 3 backpackers stranded in the Australian outback are plunged inside a hellish nightmare of insufferable torture by sadistic, psychopathic local. So this is less traditional, non-stop slasher. It's more of like a road horror experience. The sheer isolation of the Australian outback serves as a terrifying, effective backdrop that really sells the danger. Jarrett, though, absolute standout. His portrayal of the sadistic Mick Taylor is so convincing and chilling that it's difficult to separate him from this role, and I've seen him in other things where I still think he's this terrifying guy. Now, this defies some horror tropes. Instead of like the macho protagonist, Ben displays a lack of confidence that feels grounded. We have Liz, though, who stands out as the more independent, capable member of the group. This is a slow burn. The horror doesn't truly kick in until about the 45 minutes in, but the gritty realism and the smart cinematography keep the tension high throughout the build-up. So while it might not be as overwhelmingly brutal as remembered, it's a rock-solid, well-executed. If you're a fan of international horror, just want a grounded, intense premise, I recommend this one and give it an 8 out of 10. Then number 44, Dead of Night from 1945, directed by Alberto Cavalcanti, Charles Crichton, Basil Dearden, and Robert Hamer. This was written by John Baines and Angus MacPhail. Now the original writers, though, E.F. Benson, H.G. Wells, Baines, and MacPhail. So starring Mervyn Johns, Michael Redgrave, and Roland Culver. So this is a psychological supernatural horror, drama, fantasy, mystery, anthology from the United Kingdom. Currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.8. Synopsis is, an architect visiting an English country home realizes the other guests are familiar from a reoccurring nightmare. When they share their tales of the supernatural, he is filled with growing dread. So I did a featured review on episode 308 for this one. This one I had been wanting to see for quite a while and finally got around to it. So this is kind of an essential anthology horror for history, in my opinion. It masterfully uses overarching wraparound story to connect the individual supernatural segments, creating a building sense of dread that culminates in a surreal, unsettling climax. So it succeeds despite its varied tonal range. You're not getting the same experience in every segment. It shifts from like shock, scares of like Hearst Driver, to the surprisingly effective dark comedy of The Golfing Story. So for this one, though, the standout is the ventriloquist dummy. This segment is a clear powerhouse of the film. It is the most famous for a reason. Redgrave's performance is dynamite, blurring the lines between true insanity and the supernatural. Then you have a darker turn here with like the haunted mirror segment. As the point where the film pivots into that territory, it's a masterclass in pacing, showcasing a character's slow descent into madness. And there's a tone shift, like I said, with the golfing story. It's a lighter, whimsical palate cleanser. While it feels a bit long compared to the others, it fits the studio's historical penchant for comedy and provides a necessary break in tension. So this one, the visual language, the cinematography and framing are top tier, particularly in the hearse driver segment where the contrast between day and night is used brilliantly to amplify the creep factor. So for this one, it's a direct ancestor to the Twilight Zone. Its influence on the genre is undeniable, making it a must-watch for anybody interested in its roots. So for me, I give this an 8 out of 10. It's a classic and holds up incredibly well in my opinion. So then for number 43, The Picture of Dorian Gray from 1945, directed by Albert Lewin, who also wrote this. From the original story done by Oscar Wilde, stars Hurd Hatfield, George Sanders, and Donna Reed. So for this one, the genres are period drama, supernatural, horror, drama, fantasy, mystery, romance, and thriller from the United States. Currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.6. A corrupt young man somehow keeps his youthful beauty, but a special painting gradually reveals his inner ugliness to all. So for this is one that I had compiled my list. This was for 45. And I acknowledge that this is a bit tamer than the book regarding Dorian's debauchery. However, this is a necessary concession given the era's censorship, and it does diminish the film's success as a character story for me, though. But Hatfield's performance is a major highlight. His stoic, cold portrayal of Dorian offers a fascinating shift from the novel's more emotional depiction, making his susceptibility to Lord Henry's influence even more chilling. Supporting cast, though, we got George Sanders. He was in The Jungle Book. I think he's also in Village of the Damned. You have Lowell Gilmore and a young Angela Lansbury. Is essential. Acting is the moral compass, and this is a catalyst for Dorian's ascent into madness. So this also succeeds with its cinematography, effectively using mirrors to underscore the duality of human nature, and striking colorized reveals of the portrait are absolute high points for the visuals. And this succeeds in translating Wilde's core examination of appearance versus reality, vanity and the price of narcissism to the screen. For me, I thought this was an 8 out of 10, well-crafted, eerie journey into the soul of a man undone by his own desires. Then number 42, The Possessed, goes by the original title of La Donna del Lago. 1965, directed between Luigi Bazzoni and Franco Rossonelli. Now the writers here, we have Julio Questi, Bazzoni, and Rossonelli. Now the original writer of this story, though, is Giovanni Comiso. This stars Peter Baldwin, Salvo Rondon, and Valentina Cortez. This is a giallo, psychological thriller, crime, drama, horror, mystery film from Italy. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.0, Letterboxd 3.6. Synopsis is, while visiting his favorite resort town during the off-season, a novelist investigates the assumed suicide of a woman he was infatuated with. So I did a featured review on episode 264. This was for Italian Horror Month, I believe. And so the genre bridge here, this is a fascinating sweet spot functioning as an early giallo that draws heavily from the American film noir genre. It is distinct from the later, sleazy iterations of this subgenre, relying on a single murder to drive the plot rather than a high body count. And we also have a haunting character study here, as it centers around Bernard, portrayed by Baldwin, a novelist whose romantic quest to find a woman he loves turns into an obsessive, feverish investigation. Baldwin's performance is a highlight, capturing his physical and mental deterioration as he digs into the town's secrets. So, a choice of having an isolated off-season resort town is masterful. It serves as a claustrophobic, tight-knit community that actively protects its own and hides its dark side. Perfectly reflected in the film's cold framing and effective soundtrack. So we have a non-detective hook where this leans into that classic trope for gialli of a protagonist who is the amateur investigator rather than a professional. Because he's a writer motivated by his personal loss, his push for the truth feels raw and high stakes compared to traditional procedurals. So for me, 8 out of 10. This is highly recommended watch for anybody interested in the roots of the giallo subgenre, especially those who appreciate the mood and cynicism of film noir. So then, number 41, Isle of the Dead from 1945, directed by Mark Robson, written by R. Del Rey, stars Boris Karloff, Ellen Drew, and Mark Kramer. This is a drama, horror, mystery thriller film from the United States, and this is currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.4, Letterboxd 3.3. Synopsis: on a Greek island during the 1912 war, people are trapped by quarantine for the plague. If that isn't enough to worry about, one of the people, a superstitious old peasant woman, suspects a young girl of being a vampiric demon called the Vorvolaki. So I did a mini review on episode 222. I actually got to see this at the Gateway Film Center, which is kind of a cool thing there. But this is an RKO picture produced by Val Luton. I got to see the 4K. And it's cinematic gold, atmospheric. The film is set on a quarantined Greek island during the 1912 war, like I said, which is a masterclass in building tension. It beautifully plays with, is it a monster or just mass hysteria trope? You have the plague, isolation, and old world folklore clashing with modern skepticism. And Karloff's at his best. He plays General Nicholas Feridus, the watchdog. With such stern command, watching the character slowly crack as fear mounts is the true highlight here. He's supported by a great ensemble, especially Helena Themig, who perfectly embodies that creepy dread as the old ways. Now, you don't need a big budget effects here. The filmmaking relies on the claustrophobic of the island setting, sharp cinematography, and some subtle Edgar Allan Poe-esque touches to get under your skin. So I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. It's a fast watch, a must-see for Karloff fans. If you're looking for a traditional vampire movie, maybe look elsewhere. But if you want a psychological slow burn exploration of fear, this is it. And then the last film for the 40s, The Phantom of the Opera, 1925, directed by Robert Julian. Writers here we have Raymond L. Schrock, Elliot J. Clausen, and Winifred Reeve. Original writer is Gaston Leroux. This is starring Lon Chaney, Mary Philbin, and Norman Carey. This is a tragedy horror music film from the United States. It is currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.5, Letterboxd 3.7. Synopsis: a mad, disfigured composer seeks love with a lovely young opera singer. So this is a classic. This is a 1925 one, of course, that I've actually seen before. I might have seen it a couple times, but this is what reminds me that this tale is so incredibly adaptable and culturally relevant that it makes sense a century later. My last review, though, my only review for the podcast, 270 if I didn't say that. So Lon Chaney is the undisputed heart of this film. His legendary status is earned through his haunting performance and iconic self-applied makeup that holds up as a masterclass in early cinema creature design. This has an interesting look at toxic masculinity, though. Watching with modern eyes, you see that sharp commentary on a man in exile who views his protege as property, creating a tragic, possessive dynamic that feels timely despite the film's age. Then we have that Faust meta-narrative where it's kind of fitting that the opera they're doing is Faust. That creates a rich, layered commentary about the protagonist's struggle with art and consequences mirrors the very play being performed on the stage. While early film tech has its limitations, the set design is grand. The effective and the film masterfully contrasts the opulent opera house with claustrophobic, eerie dungeons that invoke the best old dark house tropes. While slightly overlong, and features the uncharacteristically over-the-top acting of the silent era, this is an 8 out of 10 for me. The sheer historical importance and iconic status, a mandatory watch for any genre enthusiasts. Then number 39, Salo, or The 100 Days of Sodom. Goes by the original title of Salo Ole 120. Don't know how to say that in Italian anymore. Gironat di Sodomia. So it's from 1975. Directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini, who also wrote this with Sergio Citti. This is the original writer, though, was Marquis de Sade. So this stars Paolo Boncinelli, Giorgio Cantadali, and Umberto Paolo Quintavalli. So it's a period drama, psychological drama, tragedy, horror film. This is a co-production of Italy and France. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.8, Letterboxd 3.1. I did a feature review on episode 53, which I believe is still my most popular episode, with The Golden Glove, which is just wild because that's a gritty double feature. Synopsis: World War II Italy. 4 fascist libertines round up 9 adolescent boys and girls and subject them to 120 days of physical, mental, and sexual torture. So, for this one, selected as part of Italian Horror Month, after identifying it as the top-rated title on Letterboxd that I had not seen from Italy. Set in World War II, the narrative follows this fascist, like we were saying, representing royalty, religion, courts, and government, who abduct 18 adolescents and subject them to extreme mental and physical torture. This is divided into 4 chapters. We have Anti-Inferno, Circle of Obsessions, Circle of Shit, and Circle of Blood, modeled after Dante's Structure of Hell. The title references the actual location of Benito Mussolini's fascist government from 1943 to 1945. This serves as a metaphor for consumer capitalism and the dangers of unchecked power. While the content is horrific, the actors were treated safely on set from everything I've read and seen. The infamous gross out stuff was actually achieved with the practical, harmless ingredients like chocolate and marmalade rather than actual waste. This features a subdued jazz soundtrack by Ennio Morricone. where it felt successfully avoided like that overwhelming the scenes alongside cinematography that provides art house vibes. So for me, a good film that aims to achieve, though it's slow paced and not recommended for general audiences. It's suited for hardcore fans of artistic horror who are prepared for more difficult subject matter. So I end up giving this one an 8 out of 10. Would recommend this one for those reasons and those people that I've just said there. Number 38, Bride of Frankenstein from 1935, directed by James Whale, written by William Hurlbut and John L. Balderston. Original writer Mary Shelley, starring Boris Karloff, Elsa Lanchester, and Colin Clive. This is a body monster psychological horror tragedy drama sci-fi from the United States, currently sitting on a 7.8, Letterboxd 4.0. So this one, synopsis: Mary Shelley reveals the main character of her novel survived, Dr. Frankenstein, who is goaded by an even crazier scientist to build his monster a mate. So Lanchester is Mary Shelley. She's also the bride. Then we have Clive, who is, once again, Dr. Frankenstein. So this one I did a mini review on episode 271. I was also on Cinema 100 to talk about this film, as they were in 1935 at one point. So the gold standard here. This isn't just a sequel. It's the best of the entire Universal Frankenstein series, effectively building on the novel's themes. So Karloff here's masterclass. He's the heart of the film. He manages to convey profound depth with very little dialogue, portraying this creature's evolution from a child discovering the world for the first time. And we also have a villain for the ages in Ernest Thesiger, who is the standout as Dr. Pretorius. He brings a perfect, palpable arrogance to the role that elevates the entire narrative. And the pacing's the biggest weakness for me. There's a massive build-up to the creation of the bride, but she also appears so late in the runtime that it ends abruptly before she has time to make a real impact, which was very classic for these early Universal classics. Despite the 1935 technology, the film looks surprisingly crisp, the framing and cinematography hold up, and the ramped-up body count keeps the stakes feeling high. So for me, I've actually seen this one in the theater. I wanted to make sure I included that here, but it's a tragic, well-developed classic for a must-watch for horror and non-horror fans alike, and I give The Bride of Frankenstein as well an 8 out of 10. And then this one here might be a little controversial, but it's actually my most seen film on Letterboxd now, and it's been my most seen film this year, watching it 7 times, and that's going to be number 37 is K-Pop Demon Hunters from 2025, directed by Chris Applehans and Maggie Kang. This is written between Danya Jimenez, Hannah McMenchen, and Kang and Applehans. So this is starring the voices of Arden Cho, Mei Hong, and Ji Young Yu. This is a computer animation, concert, pop musical, superhero, supernatural fantasy, action, adventure, comedy, family, and music, and I consider this to be horror enough because they are hunting demons. So, the ratings, 7.4 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.5. Countries of origin here, United States and Canada. Synopsis is a world-renowned K-pop girl group balances their lives in the spotlight with their secret identities as demon hunters. So, previous reviews. I did a mini review on episode 322 and 342. And so for the technically an animated action adventure film, K-Pop Demon Hunters serves as a standout horror adjacent entry for this list, eventually becoming a repeat watch family favorite thanks to my daughter. So the setup is unique. We have this global K-pop superstars, Huntrix. They're actually demon hunters tasked with maintaining a spiritual barrier against the demon lord Guima, who is actually, I can't think of his name right now. See if I can pull it up or look for it real quick. Doesn't matter, but he's been in stuff like I Saw the Devil. So the animation is crisp, cinematography as well, cleverly borrowing over-the-top expressive elements from anime to enhance the action sequences. It really is a feast for the eyes. So as beneath the catchy music, it explores meaningful concepts like Rumi's internalized shame, the weight of intergenerational trauma, the clever metaphorical use of pride by the antagonist boy bands of the Sanja Boys. They actually use a lion as their logo. The music performances are impressive as well. I listen to this in the car thanks to my daughter all the time. I think the songs are catchy. I would say that the vocals are legitimately, they fit the tone. Everything works there. It's an energetic, visually stunning ride that successfully blends music and monster hunting lore. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Highly recommend it for anybody seeking something a little bit more fresh and fun. Then number 36 here, Opus from 2025, written and directed by Mark Anthony Green. This is starring Ayo Ababiri, John Malkovich, and Juliette Lewis. This is a psychological drama horror thriller music film from the United States, currently sitting on 5.7 on IMDb, Letterboxd 2.7. Synopsis is: a writer travels to the compound of a pop icon who disappeared years ago, surrounded by his cult of sycophants, as well as a group of fellow journalists. She soon discovers his twisted plan for the gathering. So I did a previous review here. Featured was 284, mini reviews 299. This is a slow burn horror experience that favors atmosphere and tension over overt gore, earning comparisons for me like The Menu and Midsommar. This follows a writer Ariel, portrayed by Ebba Beery, who gets invited to a remote desert compound, and that pop legend is Alfred Moretti, portrayed by Malkovich, who is supposedly releasing his first album in 30 years. Ebba Beery is excellent as the grounded, relatable anchor for the audience, while Malkovich brings a compelling, eccentric energy to the mysterious singer, complete with surprisingly catchy local music. And it's original. What starts is a exclusive industry event descends into an unease as Ariel notices the unsettling reality of the Levelists, the cult-like group surrounding Moretti, while the other guests remain blindly by their own comfort. Now, this successfully uses this art house style cinematography, limited use of effects, and strong sound design, all of which keep the audience guessing, at least for me. This is a film that specifically rewards a second viewing, as its subtle clues and nuances often are missed the first time around, and it adds depth to the narrative for me. A well-crafted atmospheric horror film that manages its unsettling without relying on cheap thrills for me, and that's why I give Opus an 8.5 out of 10. Then at number 35, The Exorcism of Emily Rose from 2005, directed by Scott Derrickson, who co-wrote this with Paul Harris Brodman. This stars Laura Linney, Tom Wilkinson, and Shorin Aghdashloo. So this is a supernatural horror drama thriller film from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.7 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.1. Synopsis is, a lawyer takes on a negligent homicide case involving a priest who performed an exorcism on a young girl. So I actually saw this one in theaters when it first came out. I've seen it a couple times throughout the years, but did a mini review in episode 48. So we have a genre bending structure. This effectively blends a high-stakes courtroom drama with supernatural horror, using the trial proceedings to chronologically unpack the terrifying events leading up to Emily's death, and she is portrayed, actually they don't even give her name there, but it's going to be Jennifer Carpenter. And yeah, I thought what they did there was good. And Laura Linney and Tom Wilkinson provide consistent, strong performances. Carpenter steals the show. Her dedication to performing her own body contortions and conveying raw, authentic fear make her portrayal of possession truly stand out. And so we also have some practical over CGI, and I think it's refreshing that it prioritized practical effects with unsettling eye movements and masterful sound design, particularly the chilling manipulation of Emily's voice during exorcism scenes. And there's a little bit something here. There's faith versus logic. I'm non-religious. This offers a compelling background between skepticism and belief, presenting the possession not just as a supernatural event, but a potential psychosomatic reaction that challenges both the characters and the audience. But me, this holds up well. 8.5 out of 10. It's highly rewatchable, that it's both sad and frightening, making it a strong recommendation for both horror and non-horror fans alike. So then, number 34, Hell House LLC from 2015, written and directed by Stephen Cognetti, stars Gore Abrams, Alice Bockley, and Danny Bellini. This is a found footage horror mystery film from the United States, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.4, Letterboxd 3.1. From the United States, if I didn't say that. Synopsis is, 5 years after the unexplained malfunction that caused the death of 15 tourgoers and staff on the opening night of a Halloween haunted tour, a documentary crew travels back to the scene of the tragedy to find out what really happened. So I've seen this one twice. Did a mini review in episode 309. And this one here, unlike many found footage entries, the camera presence feels forced. This succeeds because this actually has a narrative reason to keep recording, creating promotional videos and logs for future haunts. This keeps the camera movement grounded. And there's also stuff that's mounted, so there's that. It does get shaky at times, which effectively forces you to scan the background for threats. So don't go in this expecting a complex narrative. Its strength relies on unsettling atmosphere through simple, effective storytelling. It clearly blurs the line between human interference and genuine haunting, turning the act of running a Halloween attraction into a meta-narrative about the nature of fear. Also, we have a thematically rich setting, and the location is inspired, the town name being Abaddon, a demon guarding hell, perfectly underscores the film's exploration of ambition, greed, and the conflict between capitalism and safety. The suggestion of a past cult operating the hotel adds enough mystery to elevate the scares. And the practical effects, major win, especially when dealing with props that might or might not be moving on their own. The cinematography is well executed, during the camera as like a light source to keep the viewer constantly engaged and scanning the dark corners of the frame. And the amateur selling point is something else, as that the cast brings that amateurish quality that actually enhances the documentary aesthetic. Abrams delivers a solid, humorous performance, while Bockley provides a strong, inquisitive anchor as they investigate the tragedy. Overall, compelling, genuinely unsettling Halloween watch that earns an 8.5 out of 10. Actually, I think that's when I recently just watched it too. All right, then number 33, The Devil's Candy from 2015, written and directed by Sean Byrne. This stars Ethan Embry, Sherry Appleby, and Pruitt Taylor Vince. The genre is psychological drama, horror, thriller, supernatural horror. From the United States, currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.3, Letterboxd 3.2. Synopsis is, a struggling painter is possessed by dark forces after him and his young family move into their dream home in rural Texas in a creepy haunted house tale. Seen this twice, did a mini review in episode 107, and for me, this isn't your standard haunted house flick. It explores the dark intersection between dynamic influence and artistic inspiration, effectively framing the drama and the devil is like a muse for both the painter and the killer. Now, the editing is a highlight, perfectly syncing the lives of Jesse the painter and Ray the former resident to emphasize the parallel descents they both have fallen under with this entity's sway. Then the heavy metal soundtrack fits the film energy perfectly. The sound design, especially the whispering in tongues, is strategically used to make the haunting feel incredibly claustrophobic. We also have some strong character work here, and that would include Ethan Embry and Vince delivering these intense, grounded portrayals that elevate the premise above the typical genre fare. Practical effects are visceral and well executed, though the CGI fire serves as the film's really only significant visual weak point. So for me, 8.5 out of 10, gem. That holds up with a second watch. It's an easy recommendation for horror, non-horror fans alike, if I'm going to be honest. Then coming in at number 32, Weapons from 2025. Written and directed by Zach Kreger. Stars Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, and Eldon Ehrenreich. So this is a dark comedy, folk, supernatural, witch, and psychological horror mystery film from the United States. Currently sitting on a 7.4, Letterboxd 3.6. Synopsis, when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanishes on the same night at the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. So for me, I did a featured review on episode 302 and then a mini review on 320. So the hook here, Kreger following up Barbarian with this, a gripping 2025 horror release that cements his talent for intricate, detailed-oriented writing. So 17 of 18 students vanished from a classroom at 2:17 a.m. The community's desperate, crumbling search for answers forms the backbone of a terrifying mystery. So this has a non-linear, character-based approach, shifting perspectives to hide and then reveal plot details, much like The Grudge. So much like its previous work, Kreger peppers the film with subtle Easter eggs that reward the attentive viewer as the narrative pieces fall into place. So the horror has heavy exploration of trauma, addiction, and the toxic scapegoating that turns a tragedy into a destructive witch hunt. I do think there's some flaws, though, in logic, and there's little things that I think needed to be addressed, but we have a standout ensemble cast that carries this, excellent work from Garner and Brolin, and a chilling performance from Amy Madigan. There's some minor logic gaps, like I was saying, regarding police behavior, but they're easy to overlook, and they don't ruin the overall experience for me. So I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Definitely one that, if you go in completely blind to appreciate the unfolding horror. Then a little bit of a cheat here, because it is long enough to be a feature film. And number 31, I have Stranger Things 5, the finale, 2025, written and directed by and Ross Duffer. This is starring Millie Bobby Brown, Finn Wolfhard, and Gaten Matarazzo. So it's a dark fantasy, monster, supernatural horror, sci-fi epic, drama mystery film from the United States. Currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.0. So our heroes prepare to fight Vecna as he plans to end the world as we know it. Meanwhile, in Vecna's mind, the kids are racing to escape. So Vecna is portrayed by Jamie Campbell Bower. So I did a mini review on episode 322. I think it's one of the first things I watched of the year. And this one was a 2-hour finale, essentially plays as two films in one. The first half is a massive battle. The second is a deep dive into character resolution. While it falls into the classic screenwriting trap of the overly elaborate plan to defeat the villain, the execution remains flawless enough to carry the weight. The production value is undeniable. The show is excellent use of budget, successfully integrating heavy green screen environments like the Abyss and the Upside Down without breaking the immersion. The soundscape, mixing period-appropriate songs with iconic synthwave, remains top tier. And the maturation of the young cast is a highlight. Their hold on their alongside veterans like Winona Ryder and David Harbour. Special credit goes to the villains here, Bauer and Linda Hamilton being grounded, brutal menace to their roles. While the finale leans towards a more uplifting resolution, I typically look for in a genre. The emotional impact is undeniable. I think it earned its catharsis, especially when viewed throughout the perspective of a parent. So despite some structural predictability, this is spectacular and emotionally resonant capstone. I gave the finale an 8.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. And then let's finish out the 30s here with The Day of the Beast. It goes by the original title of El Día de la Bestia from 1995. This is directed by Alex de la Iglesia, who also co-wrote this with Jorge Cuavachavara. This is starring Alex Angelo, Armando de Raza, and Santiago Segura. This is a dark comedy, psychological thriller, supernatural horror action crime film from the co-production of Spain and Italy. Currently sitting on a 7.3 on IMDb. Letterboxd has it as a 3.7. So bent on committing as many sins as possible to avert the birth of the beast, a Catholic priest teams up with a black metal aficionado and an Italian connoisseur of the occult. So I've seen this twice. First time I think was for like the Summer Challenge series, but then a mini review for 320. So we have a wild premise. A pious Catholic priest decides to... The only way to stop the birth of the Antichrist is to become a sinner. So he teams up with a black metal guy and the TV occultist to navigate the chaotic modern Madrid. So this is a standout example of dark comedy meeting horror, functioning as an inverted take on the biblical prophecy films. So some commentary here. Beyond the jokes, this offers some sharp critique of modern apathy, particularly how society ignores violence and homelessness during the commercialized Christmas season. The highlight is the main trio. Angelo carries the film as this determined, sheltered priest, while Segura is absolutely hilarious as the outrageous, metal-loving sidekick. And the filmmaking is strong, featuring effective cinematography and a charming practical effects, including stop motion. This works well despite the smaller budget. So this is highly original. It does lose a bit of momentum late in the second act before rallying for a strong, chaotic climax. So it's a frantic, intelligent, and highly recommend watch for fans of subversive 90s cinema. And I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Number 29, Redo from 2025, or maybe Redux. But this was written and directed both by Kevin and Matthew McManus. Stars Michaela McManus, Stella Marcus, and Jeremy Holm. This is an action-adventure, crime, drama, fantasy, horror, sci-fi thriller film from the United States. Currently sitting on an 6.2 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.4, and it's from the United States. And Irene Kelly travels through parallel universes, repeatedly killing her daughter's murderer. As she becomes consumed by vengeance, her humanity hangs in the balance. So Irene is being portrayed by Michaela McManus. But this one, a gripping, character-driven sci-fi thriller about Irene, a woman traversing parallel universes to kill her daughter's murderer, Neville, portrayed by Holm. It's less of a traditional horror film and more of a gritty, meditative exploration of how grief and revenge erode one's humanity. So for this one, I actually should say, I did a feature review in episode 330, mini review in episode 345. So I think Michaela McManus gives an excellent, complex performance as the vengeance-driven Irene. A major highlight is newcomer Stella Marcus as Mia, a resourceful young kidnapped victim who becomes entangled in Irene's mission. She embodies the role impressively for a feature film debut. So it's worth noting that this defies traditional horror conventions. Don't look for jump scares, or the horror comes more from like psychological dread, the bleakness of the human condition, and terrifying reality of what Neville does to his victims. I also think that Kevin and Matthew McManus, they lean into a grounded lo-fi aesthetic for the multiverse concept, which makes it feel tactful, maybe, and believable. The practical effects are excellent, avoiding reliance on CGI. The sound design perfectly complements the film's tension. So beyond the action, this poses a profound questions about obsession, fate, and whether you can truly escape a canon event. It's an intelligent indie feature that stays with you long after the credits roll. So kind of saying that, I highly recommend it. Give it an 8.5 out of 10. The number 28, a definite bleak movie, and Bring Her Back. This is from 2025. It is co-directed between Danny Filippo and Michael Filippo, and then Danny co-wrote this with Bill Hinsman. This stars Billy Barrett, Sally Hawkins, and Sora Wong. So this is a body psychological supernatural horror film that's also a mystery from Australia. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.1, Letterboxd 3.7. This is following the death of their father. Siblings uncover terrifying secrets within the secluded home of their new foster mother. So following the success of Talk to Me, the Filippo brothers return with a film they originally intended to make first. It complements their previous work well, once again focusing on like rituals and communicating with the dead, though this iteration feels heavier and more intense. And this excels at creative anxiety through psychological manipulation, a masterclass in gaslighting. This goes around with like the foster care system, and Laura, portrayed by Hawkins, a counselor who expertly works a system to hide her true, darker intentions, leaving the audience as unsure as the characters. So while it's a horror film, it successfully primarily is like a character study on grief. Hawkins is a chilling monster who hides behind good intentions, while Billy Barrett offers an excellent performance as a resilient Andy fighting to protect his sister Piper, who is Sora Wong. And this rewards viewers who pay attention to details. A second viewing makes the ending click into place, clarifying subtle interactions that reveal the true extent of Laura's manipulation and the logic behind why the foster care worker Wendy dismisses Andy's concerns. The filmmaking is technically sharp. The body horror, particularly scenes involving Oliver, are brutal, cringeworthy in the best ways possible. The cinematography effectively masks the seams. CGI feels seamless rather than distracting. So this is an unsettling, atmospheric blend of family drama and psychological horror that handles heavy themes of trauma with maturity. It lands as a memorable entry into modern horror, and I give Bring Her Back 8.5 out of 10. Then coming in just as the penultimate film here, 27, The Long Walk, 2025, directed by Francis Lawrence, written by J.T. Molnar. The original writer, Richard Bachman, a.k.a. Stephen King. This is starring Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, and Garrett Jr. This is a psychological horror thriller, survival teen horror film that's a co-production of the United States and Canada. Currently sit on a 6.7 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.5. Synopsis: in a dystopian, alternate America ruled by a totalitarian regime, a group of teenage boys compete in the annual contest known as the Long Walk, where they must maintain a certain walking speed or be executed until only one survivor remains. So I did a featured review, went to see this at Gateway Film Center, and that was a 307, then a mini review on episode 317. So a terrifying, plausible premise here is it's successfully adapting this vision, taking the simple high-stakes concept of a forced television walking contest and turning it into a chilling Orwellian character study. And what also works, though, is the emotional anchor. The premise is brutal. The film thrives on this because of the focus of the contestants' humanity. Performances by Hoffman, who is Garrity, and then Johnson, who is McVries, are the heart of the film, transforming a potential monotony of endurance into a deeply resonant study of male vulnerability and connection. And the world building here by Molnar avoids heavy-handed exposition, opting for a subtle approach that builds a terrifying dystopian America. This is perfectly complemented by the director Lawrence's stark, bleak Midwestern aesthetic and visceral, realistic depiction of the toll the Long Walk takes on the participants. So the ensemble, I think, is rock solid. I think Mark Hamill, though, deserves a special mention as his performance as the Major, bringing a cold, stoic villainy that grounds the film's morbid reality. So for me, this is an impactful, technically expert achievement that blends both a survival thriller and thought-provoking piece of social commentary. And I give The Long Walk an 8.5 out of 10. And the last film for this part of the list, number 26, Fright Night from 1985. Written and directed by Tom Holland, stars Chris Sarandon, William Ragsdale, and Amanda Bierce. Dark comedy, body supernatural teen vampire horror from the United States. Currently set on a 7.0 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.6. A horror-obsessed teenager discovers that his next-door neighbor is a murderous vampire. He tries to convince the police, his family, and friends, but to no avail. He decides to take matters into his own hands. So this is one that I've seen most of when I was growing up, at least a couple times. I did a mini review on episode 228 for this. I've seen this one in the theater as well. So this one really is kind of like a suburban Dracula. It takes like little elements of that mythology and does the requirement of like the invitation and lack of reflection, vulnerability to crosses into that contemporary suburban setting, making the horror feel unsettling close to home. And then we also have some like layered things that are interesting here, albeit sometimes uncomfortable themes. There's some overt gay undertones in the relationship between Jerry and his familiar Billy, then the predatory nature of the vampire targeting teenagers, which makes it almost a little bit like pedophilia. I think Roddy McDowall, though, stands out as Peter Vincent, a character who's a clever nod to genre legends Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. Though this is somewhat hampered by the protagonist's frustrating inability to recognize vampire rules despite being a dedicated horror fan. I think this masters a suburban gothic aesthetic using strategic cinematography and framing to mask the seams of its practical effects, all supported by tension-building 80s soundtrack. So for me, this is a classic. It's one of the definitive vampire films of the era, and even some of the creature-heavy transformation might show their age. Still very well done, and I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. So that's all I have here then for this section. Let me go ahead once again, rest my voice, and I'll come back here and get you 25-1, the last section of my Voyage through the Fives.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And welcome back. So let's start this little last section here with number 25, and that's going to be Demons. Goes by the original title of Demonia from 1985, directed by Lamberto Bava, who co-wrote this with Dario Argento, Dardano Sciacchetti, and Franco Ferrini. This stars Urbano Barberini, Natasha Hovey, and Carl Zinni. This is a dark comedy, B-horror, body, zombie horror. I don't like that they call it zombie horror, but it's demons, whatever. This is from Italy, currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.5. A group of random people are invited to a screening of a mysterious movie, only to find themselves trapped in the theater with a ravenous demon. So this one here, I did a mini review on 50, that would be episode 50, and then a mini review on episode 124. I grew up with this film, I've seen it a lot. So it's a total blast from the past, carrying a heavy dose of childhood VHS nostalgia that holds up surprisingly well. On 4K, it's a high-energy ride that leans into the fun, messy side of 80s horror. The setup here, strangers trapped in a movie theater where a mysterious mask triggers a demonic infection, is brilliant. It feels like a stylish, energetic precursor to modern fast infection films like 28 Days Later and Wreck. So director here of Bava really delivers on practical effects. The demons look genuinely unnerving. Their glowing eyes, veins, and sharp fangs. The soundtrack is a standout. Claudio Simonetti's score providing that classic pulsating metal feel. You have to be prepared to embrace the chaos. This is full of inconsistencies. The rules of infection are widely loose. There are bizarre, unexplained elements, like a random samurai on a dirt bike in the lobby. If you try to overanalyze the script, you lose the magic. Just let the Italian horror logic wash over you. So the acting is serviceable. The narrative has holes, but Demons succeeds by putting style and pure entertainment above all else. It's a must-watch for fans of the genre, in my opinion, and I give Demons an 8.5 out of 10. The number 24, Reanimator, 1985, directed by Stuart Gordon. The writers here, Dennis Pauli, William Norris, and Stuart Gordon himself. The original writer, though, H.P. Lovecraft, starring Jeffrey Combs, Bruce Abbott, and Barbara Crampton. Dark comedy, body, zombie, B-horror, sci-fi. From the United States, currently sitting on a 7.1, Letterboxd 3.8. So this one, synopsis: an odd new medical student arrives on campus, a dedicated local, and his girlfriend become involved in a bizarre experiments around the reanimation of dead tissue. I thought I had covered this on the show. I actually haven't. I have seen this in the theater, though, so that's something good. But this is a quintessential cult classic that perfectly balances gruesome horror with a sharp, dark sense of humor. It's a loose adaptation of Lovecraft that effectively serves as like a wild parody of Frankenstein. I've also seen this movie multiple times as well. I should probably say that. But Combs genuinely steals the show as Herbert West. He nails that specific brand of arrogant, quirky genius that makes you instantly believe he'd risk everything for scientific discovery. And the film's practical effects are a masterclass in low-budget creativity, especially the iconic glowing green animation serum, which is a fun fact, was just glow stick fluid. While the cat scenes miss the mark, the rest of the gore and zombie makeup hold up there beautifully. And I mean, we also have a great villain here with David Gale playing Dr. Carl Hill with a perfect amount of menace, though his character's unsettling obsession with Megan, who is Barbara Crampton, adds a layer of sleaze that makes you love to hate him. So clocking in at 105 minutes, this is surprisingly well paced for its genre. It doesn't drag, and it steadily raises the stakes until the fittingly chaotic climax. You can suspend your disbelief, though, regarding the physics of Dr. Hill's reanimated head, but in a movie this fun, these plot holes are easy to overlook. So for me, this is another 8.5 out of 10. It's a must-watch for anybody who loves mad scientists, practical effects, and bloody, unapologetic horror fun. And then number 23 is going to be the Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975, directed by Jim Sharman, who also wrote this with Richard O'Brien. This is inspired by Mary Shelley, in my opinion, but then we have Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, and Barry Botswick, as well as O'Brien. So this is a dark and raunchy comedy, parody, rock musical, comedy, and B-horror. So this is from the United Kingdom and United States. It is currently sitting on a 7.4 on IMDb, and Letterboxd is a 4.1. So this is synopsis: being a newly engaged couple has a breakdown in an isolated area and must make a call to the bizarre residence of Dr. Frank Infurter, portrayed by Curry. So this is one that I've actually only ever covered with Jamie on bonus episode number 19. So this isn't just a movie. It's a nostalgic staple passed down from father to child, proving its enduring power to find new audiences, even getting family involved. As I've shown my wife, I'll probably end up showing my kids at some point. So this is one that don't overthink the logic. It's best to ignore the geographical oddities like a random castle in the middle of Ohio and just embrace the ride. The film works best when you abandon the need for strict logic. And then beneath the chaos in camp, we have an interesting thematic tug-of-war between the free love lifestyle of the castle inhabitants and the square, sheltered world of Brad and Janet, who are Botswick and Susan Sarandon. It ultimately argues for finding a balance between total indulgence and total repression. So the strength lies in its soundtrack. Much of this functions on the backbone of the story. The acting is secondary to the music performances. Curry steals every scene that he's in, though. He's delightful to see the range of cast from Sarandon to Meatloaf. So the 1950s sci-fi aesthetic, complete with cheesy effects and fake lasers, isn't a flaw. It's part of the charm. It leans into that midnight movie vibe, utilizing fourth wall breaks to pull the audience directly into the narrative. While it's certainly an acquired taste, not for every viewer, it's an essential experience, especially for those of you who catch it with a crowd. It's a well-placed, highly entertaining ride that earns a solid 8.5 out of 10. I will say I've actually never seen this one in theater. I have seen the play twice, though, when I was back living in Adrian. Number 22, though, Bone Tomahawk from 2015, written and directed by S. Craig Zahler, starring Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson, and Matthew Fox. This is a period drama, folk, and western horror. This is United States and United Kingdom as a co-production. The ratings are IMDb has 7.1, Letterboxd 3.6. In the dying days of the Old West, an elderly sheriff and his posse set out to rescue their town's doctor from the cannibalistic cave dwellers. So I did a mini review for this one on episode number 99. So this isn't your grandfather's Western. It's a brutal collision between Old West and horror, feeling like a historical take on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Hills Have Eyes. It perfectly captures the isolation and brutality of the frontier. So the villains here are interesting because they're troglodytes, our standout horror element here. They are primitive, cannibalistic, and terrifyingly isolated. The choice of weapons, specifically the Joan Ball Tomahawk, adds a visceral, realistic layer to the brutality. And we have a stat cast as well. Kurt Russell as the definitive rugged sheriff, but the ensemble really shines with Patrick Wilson bringing excellent tension as the husband fighting through a physical disability, and Richard Jenkins as an underrated standout among a truly deep cast. And this excels by showing the looser justice and harsh realities of life in the West. It doesn't shy away from the lack of modern hygiene or the fragility of life, which makes the horror elements feel grounded rather than over the top. There's a minor knock that I have is that the middle of the travel sequences runs a little bit long. However, it's arguably necessary to help the viewer feel the true exhausting weight of the character's journey. So this is a gripping, well-crafted film that lands at an 8.5 out of 10. It's a must-watch for anybody who wants like a Western that isn't afraid to get its hands dirty. And this is one that I really do need to revisit because I have a feeling my rating is going to go up by quite a bit for this one. Then number 21, Repulsion from 1965, directed by Roman Polanski, who co-wrote this with Gerard Branch. This stars Catherine Deneuve, Ian Hendry, and John Fraser. So this is a psychological horror thriller drama film from the United Kingdom, currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.9, and the synopsis is a withdrawn manicurist who disapproves of her sister's boyfriend, sinks into depression, and experiences horrific visions of violence. So I did a mini review on episode 282 for this one. I've seen this one twice, but at its core, it's a Polanski film that is a tight, unnerving character study. It follows Carol, portrayed by Deneuve, a withdrawn manicurist who, left alone in her apartment, descends into a terrifying state of madness fueled by her intense, deep-seated aversion to men. So Deneuve absolutely anchors this one here. Whether it's her daydreaming at the salon or her interactions with the persistent Colin, who brings a vulnerability that makes you question if the men in her life are actually predators or if it's entirely a projection of her own psyche. This is a masterclass in filmmaking that doesn't need flashy effects. The use of cinematography, specifically the ways the cracks in the walls expand alongside Carol's mental decline, is a brilliant, subtle touch that perfectly mirrors her internal state. The soundtrack is a huge win for the film's tone. It utilizes beatnik jazz, piano tunes. The movie creates an atmosphere that keeps the constantly off balance, never quite sure if this is seen as grounded in reality or purely in Carol's head. It isn't without its flaws. This runs a little bit long and it definitely drags during the latter half of the second act. Even the pacing issues, this is a brilliant experience that earns an 8.5 out of 10 as well. If you can navigate the complexities of separating the artist from the person, this one remains a standout film in Polanski's filmography. And then number 20, the last one here for the 20s, Night of the Hunter from 1955. Directed by Charles Laughton. The writer here is James Agee. This is from the original writer being the novel of Davis Grubb. Stars Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, and Lillian Gish. This is a psychological drama thriller crime horror film from the United States, currently sitting on IMDb as an 8.0, Letterboxd 4.3. A religious fanatic marries a gullible widow whose children are reluctant to tell him where their real father hid $10,000 that he had stolen in a robbery. So this is one that I've actually seen in the theater. Did a mini review in episode 50. I might have even even covered this over on the podcast Under the Stairs, but this one is a perfect example why I love revisiting classics. My appreciation grew significantly upon multiple viewings. Moving past initial concerns about pacing to a truly value the narrative and the children's desperate struggle to survive. And Mitchum's masterclass here. As Reverend Paul Harry Powell, he delivers an iconic, terrifying performance as a true wolf in sheep's clothing, utilizing the twisted, brutal interpretation of the Old Testament to justify his crimes. Now, this might not fit traditional definitions of a horror film. The film's relentless sense of doom, the feeling of entrapment, and the haunting, repetitive religious hymns create an atmosphere that feels horror adjacent and deeply unsettling. The film embraces a unique, surreal visual style, complete with stage-like backgrounds that emphasize the nightmarish journey of the children as they flee from Powell. And the cast is excellent. Shelley Winters offers a tragic, deeply manipulated figure as the mother, while Gish provides a vital, stern, and protective anchor for the children. So this is one other one, 8.5 out of 10. This 55 classic is an essential watch that proves that worth to anybody willing to look past the era's pacing and black and white format. And then as we start, number 19 here, The Plague from 2025. Written and directed by Charlie Polinger. This is starring Everett Blunk, K.O. Martin, and Joel Edgerton. This is a psychological drama thriller, horror, body horror film, co-production between United States, Romania, Australia, and United Arab Emirates. This is currently set on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being: a socially awkward tween endures the ruthless hierarchy at a water polo camp, his anxiety spiraling into psychological turmoil over the summer. So I did a featured review on episode 336 for this one, and this one actually is going to appear on my 2026 end of year list. This technically came out late 2025. I didn't get to see it until 2026, so that's where I'm going to consider it over there. So this is a character-driven drama set in 2003 at a summer water polo camp. It follows Ben, portrayed by Bluck, a socially awkward tween struggling to navigate, like the synopsis said. So we have a plague metaphor here. Central to the theme is this rash dubbed the plague by the camp bully, Jake, portrayed by Martin. It serves as a powerful metaphor for like hormonal anxiety and social ostracism. It becomes like an us versus them dynamic that perfectly captures the toxicity of adolescent isolation. We have some standout performances here by like Blowick as Ben, expertly portrays the anxiety of trying to fit in, especially when risks everything to show kindness to the outcast of Eli, portrayed by Kenny Rasmussen. And then Martin as Jake delivers a charismatic turn as the bully, with his behavior sharply contextualized through his complicated relationship with his father. Edgerton as Daddy Wags provides a grounding presence, offering wisdom that echoes the film's core message about the long-term, insignificant, and current teen dramas. There's also genre bending. It's not traditional horror. It operates as a psychological drama that leads into body horror adjacency. As the bully escalates, Ben is ostracized. The film crosses the psychological thriller territory, effectively creating like a Lord of Flies style atmosphere. I think Polinger's cinematography is a major highlight. By carefully framing the pool setting, the film feels isolated and miles from civilization despite being in the city. The practical effects and sound design enhance the oppressive, uncomfortable atmosphere of the camp experience. So for me, this is a compelling, albeit difficult watch. The Plague earns a 9 out of 10 for its unflinching look at moral compasses under pressure and the lasting consequences of choices that we make in our youth. So number 18 here. This is an interesting one because this is also a wide 2026 release of Obsession. This is written and directed by Curry Baker. This is starring Michael Johnston, Indy Navarrete, and Cooper Tomlinson. So this is a dark romance, psychological horror, thriller, supernatural film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 7.9 on IMDb and Letterboxd as a 4.1. After breaking the mysterious One Wish Willow to win his crush's heart, a hopeless romantic finds himself getting exactly what he asked for, but soon discovers that some desires come at a dark, sinister price. So I did a featured review in episode 342. Looking forward to revisit this one. I know Jamie and I are going to watch it at some point, but Obsession is an interesting, be careful what you wish for, and like curio horror subgenre that elevates the thematic depth there. So we have an impressive performances by our lead duo. Johnson portrays Bear, a relatable yet fundamentally flawed protagonist who reveals himself to be the story's true villain, in my opinion, with his selfish actions. Conversely, Navarrete delivers a terrifying performance as Nikki, masterfully shifting from loving to frightening at a moment's notice. And then this film functions as a sharp look at the violence of romantic objectification, the myth of the nice guy as well. It effectively critiques toxic codependency and explores how outsiders like Ian and Sarah often misinterpret the true dynamics of a relationship based on service level observations. Now, this is also visually striking, utilizing the full frame to hide creepy details in the background and employing shadows to enhance the atmosphere. It relies heavily on practical effects to deliver brutal experience, perfectly complemented by its effective sound design. And for me, this is still impressive. 9 out of 10. Succeeds because it refuses to standard genre piece, opting more for a brutal, character-driven narrative. Then number 17, I have one that I used to watch all the time growing up and have watched a few times, throughout the years. It's going to be Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, 1995, directed by Ernest R. Dickerson. This is written by Ethan Reif, Cyrus Voris, and Mark Bishop, starring Billy Zane, William Sadler, and Jada Pinkett Smith. This one, another one that annoys me. It's not zombie horror. They are listing it that way. This is a possession demon film, but it's action fantasy thriller as well. United States is where it's from. This is on IMDb as a 6.7, Letterboxd 3.4. A high-level demon tries to obtain a mythic key that is guarded by immortal warriors called Demon Knights. So I did a mini review of this one on $299. This is a staple of my childhood, video store rental all the time, revisiting again here, and it remarkably holds up well as something that not just nostalgia. So we have an elevated stage narrative horror thing here, as it's a masterclass with this subgenre reminiscent of like Assault on Precinct 13 or Night of the Living Dead, set in a claustrophobic New Mexico hotel backdrop. So this, despite its B-movie roots, the production quality is stellar. The practical effects from the blood and gore to the distinct Middle Eastern inspired demon designs are top tier, and the 90-minute runtime is perfect for its pace. This succeeds largely due to a brilliant cast of character actors. Sadler shines as the world-weary, tortured protector, while Zane delivers a perfect performance as the charismatic, corrupting force of the Collector. And then beneath the horror, there's a surprising depth of exploring faith, belief, redemption, and second chances. While there are some minor plot holes regarding the logic of the demon's magic, the rich folklore surrounding the Demon Knights keeps the story engaging. So this transcends its B-horror potential through sheer dedication from the production team and a perfectly balanced campy tone. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Highly recommend. And then coming in at number 16, Together. This is from 2025, written and directed by Michael Shakes. This is starring Dave Franco, Alison Brie, and Damon Harriman. This is a body, monster, psychological, supernatural horror romance film from Australia and the United States. This one is currently sitting on a 6.7 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.3. Synopsis is, years into their relationship, Tim and Millie find themselves at a crossroads as they move into the country. With tensions already flaring, an encounter with an unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. So this one is actually starring, Tim is going to be Franco, and his real-life wife in both the movie and in real life is Millie, portrayed by Brie. So at the core of this one, featured review, episode 301, mini review in episode 316. This is a deep dive into relationship dynamics. The plot, a couple becoming physically fused after drinking from an odd pool in a cave, serves as a brutal, literal allegory for codependency. Having Franco and Brie, a real-life married couple, in the lead roles is an undeniable raw emotion to the screen. Their chemistry makes it a descent into chaos feel authentic and grounded, and the filmmaking is top tier. I was particularly impressed by the cinematography, which brilliantly shifts between framing their new country house as a dream home and claustrophobic prison. The blend of practical and CGI effects successfully delivers their signature body horror cringe factor. While it's inevitable this can be compared to The Substance due to the current trends, Together holds on its own. It's less about flashy social commentary and more about focus, unsettling character study of both of them. With a type script, great supporting work from Damon Harriman, and a haunting, effective soundscape, this is a standout entry in the genre, and I give this one as well a 9 out of 10. And as we start into that top 15, we have Keeper, 2025, directed by Osgood Perkins, written by Nick Lampard. This is starring Tatiana Maslany, Rossif Sutherland, and Burkett Turton. This is a body, folk, monster, psychological, supernatural horror film. Suspense, mystery, tragedy, and mystery. This is from Canada and the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.5, Letterboxd 2.5. A romantic anniversary trip to a secluded cabin turns sinister when a dark presence reveals itself, forcing the couple to confront the property's haunting past. So I did a featured review on episode 317, mini review on 322. So it's kind of interesting. Perkins last year had The Monkey and this demonstrates masterful control over slow burn tension. This builds on dread through its isolated setting rather than cheap gimmicks, proving that Perkins is operating at the top of his game in my opinion. So beyond just the sinister cabin premise, this provides a sharp exploration of toxic masculinity, gaslighting, and the burden of gender expectations. It's a compelling look at modern women struggling to balance politeness with their own survival instincts, and the cinematography and standout technical achievement utilizing light and shadow to create genuinely haunted, claustrophobic atmosphere. The production team, which wisely relies on practical effects and functional CGI to avoid cheesy traps of modern horror. Maslany, though, delivers a brilliant performance as the lead who fights to reclaim her independence, where Sutherland is chilling effective as like the nice guy masking dark secrets. Their chemistry keeps the underlying tension palpable. While the story starts as a familiar romantic trip gone wrong, the integration of nightmares, flashbacks, and terrifying history elevates the material into something unique. It's a tense, well-crafted experience that earns a 9 out of 10 as well. And then number 14, Krampus. 2015 is when this came out. Directed by Michael Daughtry, who also co-wrote this with Todd Casey and Zach Shields. This stars Adam Scott, Toni Collette, and David Koechner. Dark comedy, fantasy, folk, supernatural horror, holiday fantasy film, co-production of Canada and United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 6.2, Letterboxd 2.9. And the synopsis is a boy who had a bad Christmas ends up accidentally summoning a festive demon to his family home. So I've seen this one twice. Did a mini review on episode 110. Actually, Jamie watched it with me the last time that I did. And this is the ultimate anti-Christmas holiday movie that actually works. If you're tired of the commercialized madness, this offers the perfect, cathartic, dark, and bleak alternative. So this is playing on the terrifying side of the Santa mythos. Instead of presents for the good, it's a festive demon for the bad. It taps at primal childhood fear that feels fresh and fascinating. And then there's actually some great chemistry for the cast. I was skeptical about the mix of comedic actors, but the cast of like Scott and Koechner totally sell it. And you also have Toni Collette mixed in here as well. Watching their characters move past their ideological differences to focus on family protection is a surprising, strong narrative thread. And then, so the film perfectly balances a lighter comedic tone with genuinely dark horror elements. The snowstorm creates a claustrophobic, intense atmosphere that heightens the stakes. The pacing keeps it moving without losing tension as well. And then, aside from the living gingerbread men, which are a little bit too much for me, the practical and CGI effects are seamless. Krampus himself, with a mysterious mask, is visually striking, and his minions, the creepy elves and twisted toys, bring a dark, Nightmare Before Christmas energy that I absolutely loved. So for me, this is a solid 9 out of 10. It's a film that I wish I would have caught sooner. If you want a horror movie that captures the spirit of the season in the most twisted way possible, this is a must-watch here. So then number 13, Osgood Perkins making another appearance here with The Blackcoat's Daughter from 2015. He wrote and directed this. Emma Roberts stars with Kierna Shipka and Lucy Boynton. This is a psychological drama and horror, folk horror, suspense, mystery, tragedy, thriller. This is a co-production of Canada and United States, currently sitting on IMDb as a 5.9, Letterboxd 3.2. The synopsis is 2 girls must battle a mysterious evil force that got left behind at their boarding school over winter break. So I've seen this twice, did a mini review on episode 100, and this is a slow burn that is a masterclass in atmosphere. It centers on 3 interconnected story arcs. 2 girls are abandoned at their boarding school over winter break, which is Kat, portrayed by Shipka, and then Rose by Boynton, and then a mysterious woman named Joan, who is portrayed by Emma Roberts. So this excels because it refuses to spell everything out. It leaves the truth ambiguous, forcing the audience to decide whether the horror stems from supernatural forces or the breakdown of mental health. And so we have a non-chronological editing as a major strength. By jumping between perspectives, this builds tension and allows the viewer to piece together the full picture, making the final reveal more effective. The acting is well top tier. Shipka is chilling as she portrays a crumbling mental state. Boynton nails the role of the rebellious teen, and Roberts is captivating her quiet, unstable role. And then the production shows restraint and smarts. This relies on minimal visual effects, choosing to keep its entity as a shadow, and features a powerful score to heighten the ominous mood of every scene. This is a highly recommended watch for any horror fan, whether you are in it for the slow burn dread or the character study. And this one earns, once again, a 9 out of 10. And then number 12, Green Room, also from 2015. Written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier. This is starring Anton Yelchin, Imogen Poots, and Alia Sawkat. So this is a psychological thriller splatter horror from the United States. Currently sitting on a 6.9 on IMDb. Nice. And Letterboxd 3.6. Synopsis is, a punk band is forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar. So this one, mini review in episode number 99. I've seen this one, I think, twice as well. So for me, this is one that I originally learned about on podcasts. It's not traditional horror. The story is straightforward, though. A punk band forced to fight for their lives, but it shines because the characters make realistic, flawed decisions under pressure rather than acting like perfect heroes. Yelchin delivers a strong performance, and in his lead here, R.I.P. Sawcat adds a necessary quirky humor to the horror, and Patrick Stewart is menacingly effective as the lead villain, despite feeling slightly out of place. So this utilizes visceral practical effects that induce squirming without going overboard, supported by sharp pacing and a constant suffocating sense of dread. So for me, this one, 9 out of 10, horror thriller at its bleak, intense, and highly recommend for fans of the genre. So then just missing out on the top 10, The Devil's Rejects at number 11, 2005, written and directed by Rob Zombie, starring Sid Haig, Sherry Moon Zombie, and Bill Moseley. This is a splatter horror crime drama western. Now the country of origin here, United States. This is currently sitting on a 6.7 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.4. Synopsis is: the murderous backwoods Firefly family take to the road to escape the vengeful Sheriff Wydell, who is not afraid of being as ruthless as his targets, and Sheriff is being portrayed by William Forsythe. So this one, mini review in episode 48. I think I've seen this at least twice, maybe even 3 times, but this is a road horror pivot. A distinct shift from the House of a Thousand Corpses homestead setting to a 70s exploitation-style road movie. It's a subgenre that I love, and it truly shines. And this succeeds by fleshing out the core cast. Captain Spaulding, who's portrayed by Haig, gets necessary depth. Otis, who is Moseley, evolves into a badass, and then Baby feels less annoying than in the previous outing. Then you also have Sheriff Wydell, who, like I said, portrayed by Forsythe, is a standout antagonist. His quest for vengeance against the Firefly family forces him to mirror their depravity, effectively blurring the lines between good and bad, and I love a good gray character. High marks here for Robert Kurtzman's practical effects and the choice to use traditional cinematography. The soundtrack is a major asset, particularly the iconic usage of Freebird during the climax. I do have a dialogue problem, though. The primary gripe is the vulgarity fits certain settings. It feels unnatural and cringe at times when forced upon characters who should have maintained a sense of innocence, in my opinion. But this is the peak of the Firefly trilogy, and arguably Zombie's best film. It earns a solid 9 out of 10 for me, falling just short for me of the all-time status. And number 10, Diabolique, from 1955, directed by Henri George Clouzot, who co-wrote this with Jerome Giromani, Renee Masson, and Frederick Grendel. This stars Simone Sigurot, Vera Clouzot, and Paul Meurus. So this is a psychological thriller, crime, drama, mystery, horror film from France, currently sitting on an IMDb rating of 8.1, Letterboxd 4.2. So this one here, the synopsis is: the wife and mistress of a loathed school principal plan to murder him with what they believe to be the perfect alibi. So this one here, I did this one for T-Put's Movie Club Challenge, and this is a must-watch. I finally tackled this horror classic after seeing it. It would come up on so many best of lists, and hearing it is a major influence for many filmmakers that I admire. It's a brilliant setup. A loathed school principal is targeted by for murder by his wife of Christina and his mistress Nicole in a plot to make it look like his death was an accident. So it's not your standard whodunit. Since we get to see the crime perpetrated early on, the real mystery is what happens when the body goes missing from the pool, pushing Christina into a descent into madness and paranoia. So this is brilliantly towing the line between grounded thriller and a gothic ghost story. You spend the whole runtime wondering, is this a supernatural haunting or is there a terrifying logical explanation? This relies on the dynamic duo of Clouzot and Sigurot, and Clouzot perfectly captures the frazzled, weak-willed wife, while Sigurot provides the icy resolve to need and anchor this lethal plan. And the cinematography, particularly the clever use of framing and mirrors, is top tier. Even at nearly 2 hours, the pacing never drags, and it builds towards an ending that completely caught me off guard. So this is an absolute masterclass in tension and mystery, an easy 9 out of 10, and a film that I'm already looking forward to revisiting. I haven't as of yet, but I will at some point. So then number 9, The Descent from 2005, written and directed by Neil Marshall, starring Shauna McDonald, Natalie Mendoza, and Alex Reed. This is a mountain adventure, monster splatter, supernatural, psychological, horror, thriller, survival film from the United Kingdom. Synopsis: a caving expedition goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately pursued by a strange breed of predators. So this one is currently sitting on a 7.2, Letterboxd 3.6. If I didn't already say that, and if I did, I will edit that out. But my previous review was a mini one in episode 66. I've seen this at least 3 times, I think, twice, something like that. I know I've seen this in the theater once. And this was when it did a reissue at the Gateway Film Center. So Neil Marshall here masterfully blends 2 distinct subgenres, the claustrophobic thriller survival and the feral creature feature. It's seamless. The film creates a profound sense of dread that exists long before the monsters actually appear, making the transition feel earned rather than jarring. So the Appalachian Cave system isn't just a location, it's an antagonist. Even if you aren't claustrophobic, the atmosphere in this, like the pitch black, tight tunnels and auditory hallucinations, effectively induce a deep sense of unease. And I would say McDonald's portrayal as Sarah is the film's emotional anchor. Watching her character arc from broken survivor to a prior tragedy into a hardened fighter is riveting. The Descent title is a dual meaning here. A literal trip underground and a psychological spiral into madness. And then you also have like Mendoza's turn as Juno is complex. She navigates the thin line between supportive friend and antagonist with subtle, layered acting that makes the eventual betrayal feel devastatingly real. The practical effects here shine, particularly the creature design and the visceral gore. While there are a few moments where the CGI green screen shows its age, the masterful cinematography elevates the environment and maintains the tension throughout. While the musical score is subtle, the soundscape of the cave echoing yells and unsettling distorted laughs is used strategically to keep the audience off balance and immersed in the horror. So this is an absolute essential for any horror fan, and I give this one a 9.5 out of 10. Number 8, Tales from the Hood from 1995, directed by Rusty Cundiff, who co-wrote this with Darren Scott. This stars Clarence Williams III, Corbin Burnson, and Joe Torre. This is a dark comedy, body, psychological, supernatural, zombie, B-horror, gangster, psychological drama, thriller, crime film from the United States. Currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.7. Synopsis is, a funeral director tells 4 strange tales of horror with an African-American focus to 3 drug dealers he traps in the place of business. So, did a mini review for this one on episode 297. This one was in constant rotation on the movie channels for me growing up, so I've seen this one a lot. It's an incredibly well-paced anthology. The wraparound story featuring Mr. Sims, who's Williams, creates a perfect, eccentric framework to trap us in these 4 tales as effectively as the gangbangers he's terrorizing. It's a haunting how pertinent this 95 film remains today, though. Whether it's the segments on police brutality, systematic racism, or domestic abuse, the social commentary lands just as hard, if not harder, than it did 30 years ago. So we also get some good stop motion effects here in the third tale, which are a highlight with the dolls. There's a Clockwork Orange inspired finale with Crazy K segment. It's perhaps the most powerful and thought-provoking story of the bunch. Credit where it's due. This relies on practical effects rather than CGI, which keeps the atmosphere grounded and terrifyingly tangible. The acting is impressive across the board. It's particularly great with seeing David Alan Grier in a role outside of his usual norm of like comedy. Clarence Williams III brings such a fantastic, eccentric energy as a funeral director. For me, 9.5 out of 10. It's a masterclass in bending genre horror with necessary biting social truths. The number 7, the movie 7 from 1995 as well. This one is directed by David Fincher, written by Andrew Kevin Walker, starring Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt, and Kevin Spacey. So this is a cop drama, hard-boiled detective, police procedural, psychological drama, thriller, serial killer, tragedy, mystery horror film from the United States. This is an IMDb rating of 8.6, Letterboxd 4.4. Synopsis: 2 detectives, a rookie and a veteran, hunt a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as the motive. So I did a mini review for this one in episode 177, and let's start by acknowledging how Fincher defines the environment. This isn't a police procedural, it's a beautifully bleak, dirty, and perpetually rainy neo-noir. This feels like, the city feels like a character itself, capturing perfectly the sense of dread and depression that make the stakes feel so high. Focus on the central contrast between the leads. You have Somerset, the weary academic veteran, pitted with the hot-headed, emotional rookie in Mills, and that would be Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, respectively. Their clashing temperaments isn't just character building, they are the engine that drives the tension through the climax. I also love the effectiveness of the killer's ideology with the 7 deadly sins concept. Non-religious viewers using the 7 deadly sins as a master plan is a solid, compelling hook that creates a sophisticated structure for the murders. It's a concept that is imitated frequently since, but rarely on this level of impact. And also give credit here to the performance that really carried the weight of the script. Freeman is essentially the voice of wisdom, providing a grounded anchor, while Pitt is perfectly volatile foil. Don't forget, we have Kevin Spacey. Despite his limited screen time, is absolutely commands every second that he's there. Highlight how this film uses practical effects and restraint. We aren't necessarily seeing the horror play out, but we're seeing the aftermath, which creates more realistic and grounded feel than a standard horror film. So for me, I give this a 9.5 out of 10. It's a masterclass in gritty, intense filmmaking that holds up incredibly well for anybody to revisit and experience it for the first time. And then number 6, another one that I grew up watching, have seen quite a bit of times over the years, and that's going to be The Return of the Living Dead from 1985, written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, starring Clu Gulager, James Karen, and Don Kelfa. This is a dark comedy, body, supernatural, teen, zombie, B-horror, parody, teen, comedy, sci-fi film from the United States. Currently sitting on IMDb as a 7.3, Letterboxd 3.8. This is when two bumbling employees at a medical supply warehouse accidentally release a deadly gas into the air. The vapors cause the dead to rise again as zombies. So the only time I've ever covered this on the podcast, mini review on episode 36. I've seen this one in the theater, though. This is a film that grew on me from a young age, serving as a staple of my upbringing alongside Romero's classics. Returning to it recently for a birthday viewing just to confirm it's an all-time favorite, even outside the genre. Oh, yeah, just across genres. O'Bannon's direction is brilliant. He creates a genuine parody of Romero's work that manages to deliver consistent scares while using comedy for perfect levity. It's rare to find that balance without undermining the tension, and this does break rules. As a traditionalist, I usually dislike the idea of zombies that run, talk, and this is an exception. The running adds real anxiety. The talking zombies create some eerie moments that actually enhance the film. So the practical effects are fantastic. They hold up incredibly well. More importantly, the score is one of my all-time favorites. I still keep Party Time and Tonight We'll Make Love Until We Die in my regular rotation. The pacing's flawless. It doesn't waste time, driving right into the chaos. The acting is strong across the board. Gulager's portrayal of a stressed yet heroic business owner to the iconic performance from Linnea Quigley. So minor nitpicks, despite this being a perfect 10 out of 10 for me, it's not without its flaws. The ending feels a bit implausible. There's some inconsistencies revolving the mechanics of the Living Dead, but these are small issues, don't detract from the overall experience for me for Return of the Living Dead. And kicking off my number 5, the newest film on this list, or the highest film that is this new on the list, of Sinners from 2025, written and directed by Ryan Coogler. Stars Michael B. Jordan, Miles Canton, and Haley Steinfeld. This is a period drama, folk, supernatural vampire horror. This is a co-production between the United States, Australia, and Canada. Currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 4.1. The synopsis: trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. So I did a featured review on episode 290 and a mini review on episode 319, and this is one that immediately hooked me. Starting near the end, where you're jumping 24 hours to see how everything unfolds, leans into a familiar trope there that establishes an incredibly dark, tense vibe right out of the gate. So this is like 1930s Southern period drama about twin brothers attempting to outrun their criminal past. That's Smoke and Stack, being portrayed by Michael B. Jordan. And they completely shift gears into a full-blown horror creature feature. It's akin to another movie. I'm not going to spoil what that is, but most people that have seen it know what I'm talking about. So it's absolutely a horror film. It elevates itself beyond the standard bounds of the genre. Coogler masterfully uses the central monster as a heavy, layered allegory for oppression, Jim Crow-era segregation, colonialism, and deep, entrenched generational trauma. This touches beautifully on the strength of community, biblical themes of sin and redemption, and the ultimate fragility of belonging when face-to-face with absolute evil. There's a powerhouse musical sequence here centered on the character of Preacher Boy, portrayed by Canton, that absolutely demands to be seen on the biggest screen possible. The choreography brilliantly features diverse global dancers spanning like Native African, futuristic DJ, rock, and Asian themes, while deliberately excluding white artists as a sharp piece of social commentary that foreshadows the coming horrors. So the creature design, practical effects deliver exactly what you want. The blood execution is satisfying, tactile, and well balanced. While not feeling over the top, seamless practical effects work with the CGI. So the atmosphere is heavily enforced by impeccable soundtrack and sound design that perfectly captures the period's weight while building pure dread. So Jordan delivers an absolute best performance of his career, masterfully taking on the dual roles of Smoke and Stack to show how same trauma can manifest in entirely different personalities. And the rest of the cast has an exceptional depth, with Canton showing off his incredible singing voice, Steinfeld bringing weight to a notable adult role, and Jack O'Connell turning in a fiercely charismatic villain. So my rating here for this one is a 10 out of 10, and I know not everybody feels that way, but it just works for me. So number 4, I have The Witch from 2015, written and directed by Robert Eggers, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, and Kate Dickie. This is a dark fantasy, period drama, folk, psychological, witch, supernatural horror, thriller, suspense mystery. This is from the United States. It is sitting on a 7.0 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.8. So this one, a family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. So I did a mini review all the way back on episode 2 and then one on 118. This is a film that completely blows you away, especially with multiple viewings, revealing layers that go far beyond the simple shown on the screen. So set in 1630s New England, the film leverages the absolute isolation of the wilderness, a crippling fear of the unknown to build a restlessness, sense of foreboding. While there's a clear supernatural presence, the narrative brilliantly allows allows for a grounded, logical interpretation, suggesting the family's descent could be hallucination from like ergot-infected corn. Then we have a fractured family here, as the disappearance of the baby Samuel acts as a catalyst driving a wedge of grief and sin through this deeply religious family as they turn on one another. Got some definite standout performances. Anya Taylor-Joy delivers a phenomenal lead as Thomason, anchoring a stellar cast that perfectly captures the slow descent into despair. And the drab, beautiful cinematography, a haunting score steadily escalates the suspense, leading to polarizing ending that ultimately brings a narrative full circle. This is an absolute masterpiece of the decade that offers a terrifying, realistic look at the historical panic and religious fervor. A definite 10 out of 10 for me. Then at number 3, Deep Red, aka Profondo Rosso, from 1975, directed by Dario Argento, who co-wrote this with Bernardo Samponi. This starred David Hemmings, Daria Nicolodi, and Gabriele Labia. This is a giallo, psychological slasher, splatter, horror film, whodunit mystery thriller from Italy. Currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.9. Synopsis is, after seeing the murder of a famous psychic, a musician teams up with a feisty reporter to find the killer while evading attempts on their lives by an unseen assailant bent on keeping a dark secret buried. So this is one where I did a mini review on episode 194 and another one on 289. I actually seen this one in the theater a couple times, I believe. But this is a fantastic giallo essential that lives up to the hype. Perfect for catching in a 4K restoration or on the big screen, but holds up just as well on Blu-ray. Should also say, I think I covered this on T-Puts when we were doing, like, looking at certain genres, as this is one that he recommended as a one you should start with, as where to begin with. Now, something that stands out here is the Black Glove Killer mystery that actually keeps you guessing until the final reveal, avoiding the predictability that plagues many of the entries in this subgenre. The story is fun, logical puzzle unraveling the cold open as a Christmas thing here through the psychic Helga Ullman's murder. It allows the classic giallo tropes, a non-police protagonist of Marcus, portrayed by Hemmings, leading the investigation, aided by a feisty reporter of Gianna, portrayed by Daria. But this executes with incredible creativity. The death scenes are creative and diverse, moving beyond just simple stabbings. The practical effects look great, and Argento's cinematography is a hallmark of the film, focusing on visual storytelling rather than just trying to piece clues together. So you can't talk about Deep Red without the Goblin score. It's absolutely essential, perfectly building the atmosphere and sending out in all the bright ways possible. I actually listen to it pretty regularly. While Marcus is a bit problematic lead, Nicolodi's performance as Gianna is a highlight. She's empowered, forward, and refuses to let Marcus walk all over her. So for me, 10 out of 10, arguably Argento's best made film and a must-watch for any giallo fan. So this is where we're going to start to split hairs here, because next one I have an absolute classic across genres of Jaws, from 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Peter Benchley and Carl Gottlieb. Now, originally this is also written, the book was by Benchley. Now this stars Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss. This is a monster horror, sea adventure, survival drama thriller film. So this is one from the United States, currently sitting on an 8.1 on IMDb, Letterboxd 3.9. Synopsis: a local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer team up to hunt down a great white shark wreaking havoc at a beach resort town. So this one, mini review, episode 33 and 235. Also did this one for T-Put's Russian Roulette franchise series. So this isn't just a film. It's a quintessential blockbuster that fundamentally changed the trajectory of the industry. So we have some interesting town dynamics with the internal struggle of the Amity Island prioritizing tourism dollars over public safety is a film's heartbeat. Watching Brody, who's portrayed by Scheider, deal with the mayor's pressure is frustrating, yet feels remarkably real, especially after living through COVID. The malfunctioning mechanical shark was a blessing in disguise. By limiting the creature's screen time, this creates genuine building dread rather than overexposure. Then the trio on the orca is where the film truly shines for me in a masterpiece sequence. The chemistry is incredible, with Quint, who's portrayed by Shaw, his haunting World War II monologue serving as a standout character moment. So the performances are superb. Like I said, the practical effects remain visually superior to much of the modern CGI we see today. While the iconic main shark theme is a masterclass in tension, there are a few upbeat musical choices that felt a little bit out of place, though it's a minor quibble. So it's striking how 45-year-old societal tensions, like the debate between public safety and economy, feel just as relevant as they did back then as they do now. So for me, 10 out of 10 experience. If you haven't seen this one, it's an essential view. And I've actually even seen this with Jamie at the drive-in as well. So number one, if you know me, this one should not come as a shock, from 1985. Day of the Dead, written and directed by George A. Romero, starring Laurie Cardell, Terry Alexander, and Joseph Plato. This is a body zombie B-horror thriller from the United States. Currently sitting on a 7.1 on IMDb. Letterboxd 3.8. A small group of military officers and scientists dwell in an underground bunker as the world above is overrun by zombies. So I've done a mini review on episode 50 and then another one on 296. I'm actually going to be watching this again soonish now that I have the 4K. Did see this in the theater most recently, though. So for me, adult appreciation here. This is a film that was in constant rotation as a child. It truly requires the adult perspective to fully grasp the weight of the story, though. It stands as a perfect companion piece to Dawn of the Dead, but offers a much bleaker, more claustrophobic vision of the apocalypse. Then you have this bunker dynamic. The film thrives on the tension between the desperate, fracturing group of military officers and scientists who are forced to live together. It's a masterclass in watching how power corrupts when the chain of command is non-existent and fear takes the wheel. The central friction, though, is between scientist Logan, portrayed by Richard Liberty, and the militaristic, power-hungry Rhodes, whose Plato feels disturbingly relevant. Rhodes is the epitome of a bad leader, vicious and uncompromising, highlighting how easily social structure crumble without proper guidance. Now, the character arcs here of like John and McDermott provide the film's philosophical heart. They grapple with the why of it all. Are we preserving history of the world that will never return, or is it time to stop fighting and start living out our final days? It's a compelling look at the necessity of human adaptation. So filmmaking's top tier. Tom Savini's practical effects and gore are legendary, with the zombie designs they feel distinctly improved over Dawn. Coupled with Romero's framing and John Harrison's atmospheric score, you have a horror film that is technically stunning, even if it's incredibly dark. So ultimately, this ascends to become my favorite all-time horror film. It's less about the zombies and more about the desperate, broken characters trying to navigate the end of everything. And for me, this one, once again, 10 out of 10. Highly recommend if you've not seen it or if it's been a while since you have seen it. So what do you think about this list? Is there anything you think I have too high, anything you think I have too low? In the outro, I'll give you how you can get a hold of me, but I'm going to go ahead and rest my voice one last time before I close out the show.
Hello, I'm Mark, host of the Project Football podcast. If you're into your football, even just a little bit, and don't mind a decent slice of football-related randomness and some new music thrown in on the side, then this may well be the podcast for you. My guests discuss their history with the team they support, pick their best 11 in a trip here through time, and pick out moments in football history they'd like to have experienced from a particular individual's point of view in 4-4-U. As well as that, there's a few other guest segments that deliver on the aforementioned randomness in copious amounts. If this sounds like your sort of thing, check out the podcast on all the usual audio platforms, as well as on Twitter/X at proj_foot, Instagram at Project Football Podcast, and on Facebook, if you just search for Project Football Podcast, you'll find us there. Give it a listen, you might even like it.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that's going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the PodNation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, I'm going to jump back into doing my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatches, and be also just doing Scouring Through the Sixes as well. But I believe that it's going to be The Rogue's Tavern is from 1936. That'll be a film that'll be featured over there. And then I believe with how early I'm going to be done with the prep for this episode here that you are now listening to, that I'm going to try to hold off a little bit to see if I can check out Her Private Hell at the Gateway Film Center to make that a feature review. If not, I will have a different 2026 film as, you know, my other feature review over there. So then my 1996 rewatch is going to be The Dentist. This one is from 1996, if I didn't already say that. Drawing a blank there. I'm also going to try to see if I can go to the Gateway Film Center to watch Cannibal Holocaust. That might end up getting pushed out. We'll kind of see just when that actually shows and if the times line up, but that's one that I've been meaning to rewatch for a while. If I get to see it in the theater, that's going to be kind of a bucket list film there. And then I'll have a 2026 rewatch for you as well as more mini reviews. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this outro outside of saying... That wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending